The boy's name was Eugene Reinhardt. 300 years ago, he had joined forces with 4 companions to bring down the Demon King. Those companions were the reckless Behemoth, the irritating Sina, the calculating Andes, the foolish Maureen, and himself Helmo, the strongest among them. Back then, he still possessed a head of striking red hair, not the ridiculous white hair he had now. Together, they stormed the Demon King's castle and eliminated 3 of the 5 Demon Kings. But everything went wrong when Behemoth foolishly rushed forward on his own, completely missing the Demon General's ambush. At the decisive moment, Helmo stepped in and blocked the fatal strike meant for him. Although Behemoth managed to kill the Demon General, Helmo's wounds were already beyond saving. As he lay dying, he grasped his friend's hand and begged him to make sure the Demon King would be slain. Helmo swore, in the name of a hero, that every Demon King would be defeated. Yet when he later read the story, he nearly lost his temper. Turning toward him, the book claimed he said, "Actually, I've liked you for a long time." He had never spoken such nonsense. Which idiot wrote this fairy tale anyway? Had that author been beaten by him 300 years ago? He seriously wanted to mail the man razor blades. What none of the original 4 heroes could ever have imagined was that the fallen Helmo would be reborn with all his memories intact, reincarnated as Eugene, a descendant of the hero Behemoth. Eugene stared at the portraits hanging on the wall. Senna later became the youngest tower master in history. Andis rose to become the saint of the Holy Empire. Morin even founded his own kingdom. As for Behemoth, he was worshipped worldwide as a legendary hero and ended up marrying 36 wives. How had they failed to notice back then that he was such a shameless womanizer? But the real mystery was this: the Demon King was still alive. Helmo had died at the sealed Demon King's castle. Yet afterward, Behemoth had made a contract with the Demon King, bringing the war to an end. For the past 300 years, the world had remained peaceful. Why would Behemoth make such a pact? What exactly had he been thinking? Eugene's current body was packed with muscle. Even his own father felt uneasy when facing him. If Eugene weren't aging and slowly losing strength, he would definitely train even harder to reclaim his former power. At that moment, Eugene shattered another wooden training dummy. Irritation welled up inside him. The village carpenter must have been utterly black-hearted to sell such poorly made junk. He really deserved to be dragged out and beaten. Still, tomorrow was the coming-of-age ceremony, so Eugene wouldn't need the dummies anymore. His father, however, looked troubled. During the ceremony, children between the ages of 10 and 15 would gather at the main house, where duels would determine the strongest among them. But branch families were treated differently. They were forbidden from using real weapons before the ceremony, and were not allowed to practice magic either. Thinking about these restrictions made Eugene furious. Being reborn as his old friend's grandson was bad enough, but having to obey these garbage rules on top of that was infuriating. If his old companion were still alive, Eugene would definitely drag him out and beat him too. "Behemoth," Eugene thought coldly, "let me see whether your grandsons can actually take a punch." The following day, Eugene arrived at the main house. The massive Reinhardt castle had only a single servant cleaning the grounds. Of course, there was no welcoming ceremony. Only members of the direct family were allowed to wear the lion emblem on the left side of their chest. What Eugene didn't expect, however, was that the main house had assigned him an incredibly beautiful maid. With just a ring of a bell, she would appear instantly. It was hard not to envy such a life. Who wouldn't want servants to handle everything? But Eugene was far from careless. He knew that a single inappropriate move would earn him severe punishment from the main house. Besides, he was only 13 years old. So he immediately requested to visit the training grounds. Even with 500 pounds of weight strapped to his body, his spear thrusts were as fierce as a dragon's charge. In his previous life as Helmo, he had never neglected training. After being reborn, that habit hadn't changed. No matter how exhausted he became, he always pushed himself to the limit. It had to be said that Behemoth's bloodline was absurdly powerful. The maid beside him was completely stunned. She could hardly believe this was the strength of a 13-year-old boy. Just then, the twin heirs of the main house, Stein and Stair, approached and asked the maid what Eugene was doing. Eugene noticed them as well. Couldn't they see for themselves? Their intelligence was honestly worrying. Stein, the arrogant young master who had never been ignored before, immediately shouted at Eugene, demanding an apology. What he didn't expect was that Eugene complied without hesitation. "I'm sorry." This response left Stein utterly confused. He didn't know whether he should be angry or not. But with Stair's guidance, he quickly regained his composure and demanded that Eugene kneel and apologize properly. Eugene let out a helpless sigh. Is that really necessary? At that moment, Stein spotted a wooden sword lying on the ground. He picked it up and shouted, "Out of kindness, I challenge you to a duel." Eugene warned him not to casually speak of duels, but Stein took this as a sign of fear. "Then hurry up and clean the carriage you rode in. Your body stinks of cow dung and dirtied the cushions." Eugene's expression instantly darkened. "You ignorant little brat. I'll teach you a proper lesson." He removed the sandbag tied to his arm. When it hit the ground, it smashed a crater 5 meters deep. Stein froze completely. He wanted to say, "This must be a misunderstanding," but with his sister watching, the words wouldn't come out. Eugene tossed away the other sandbag and said calmly, "Throw out your handkerchief, young man." The moment Stein did so, Eugene attacked without hesitation. Stein was sent flying on the spot, vomiting stomach acid, as he soared nearly 2 miles away. He never imagined Eugene would be so shameless, attacking the instant the handkerchief was thrown. Stair rushed forward to check on her brother, but before she could reach him, she was forced to stop by the foul vomit splattered everywhere. She could only turn back in fury and shoot Eugene a sharp glare. However, there was nothing she could actually do to him. The moment the handkerchief hit the ground, the duel was officially in effect. At that point, the only person she could blame was the arrogant young master himself for being far too inexperienced. Although Stein had instinctively tried to retreat to soften the blow, Eugene's single strike still sent him flying. Even if Stein might have room to grow in the future, as a descendant of Baimut, he was clearly unqualified at present. On the other side, Stein shakily forced himself back to his feet. The vomit around his mouth hadn't even been wiped clean, yet he still stared at Eugene with stubborn, unwilling eyes. Seeing how miserable Stein looked, Eugene couldn't help but wonder if he might have gone a little overboard. Just then, a man rushed over in a hurry. The moment Stein saw him, he immediately threw himself into the man's arms and burst into tears, crying uncontrollably. This man was Heizar, Stein's instructor. After learning what had happened, Heizar respectfully bowed to Eugene on Stein's behalf to apologize, then quickly carried Stein away to examine his injuries. The scene shifted. Eugene was now enjoying the privileges of aristocratic life. The little maid beside him pulled out a small notebook and began reporting updates. "The other young masters and young ladies will arrive one by one before tomorrow evening," she said. What Eugene didn't know was that he had already been marked by a scheming old aunt. She was the second wife of the main house. She absolutely could not tolerate her child losing to a branch family member in a duel, nor could she endure the ridicule of the other wives. In her rage, she directly slapped Stein. If Heisar hadn't been a knight favored by the family head, she would have wanted him dead, let alone Eugene. However, killing Eugene outright would certainly raise suspicion, so she could only arrange for the crafty Stair to approach Eugene instead, first building a relationship, then waiting for the right moment to strike. This was exactly why marrying too many wives was dangerous. You never knew when one of them might turn malicious. Friends, remember this lesson well. The next morning, the training-obsessed Eugene was doing his usual run with heavy weights. Unexpectedly, the cute little maid stopped him. It turned out the family head had suddenly returned. She didn't know whether Eugene should go greet him immediately or change his clothes first. Her flustered reaction was strangely adorable. Soon after, everyone gathered at the castle gates to wait. Standing in front was the first wife, Cows. Beside her was the eldest son of the main house, Lyde. Then came the twin siblings, followed by the second wife, as the sound of carriage wheels approached. The family head, Guide Reinhardt, had returned. What no one expected was that the first thing he proposed was having dinner with all the children together. What exactly was he planning? They quickly proceeded to the dining hall. The bloodline ceremony was a long-standing tradition meant to protect the interests of the main house. Before the ceremony, branch family members were forbidden from practicing magic or using real weapons. Because of this, they had never once defeated the main house in all these years. However, this time, the family had decided to change the traditional duel format. He invited outside assistants, Rolbon, from the Red Tower of Yarrow, a disciple's disciple of Sia. The ceremony would take the form of an adventure within a maze he created. Participants would enter from different entrances, make their way to the center, and defeat the monster leader. Whoever succeeded would be declared the winner and could choose any treasure from the main house's treasury. Although everything was created through magic, the experience would feel completely real. Eugene had faced countless monsters like these before. His confidence surged instantly. To him, this treasure was practically free, but caution was still necessary. After dinner, Eugene was suddenly stopped by a heavily muscled man. In the very next second, Eugene was attacked. The man clearly thought that being 15 years old and built like that made him impressive. Unfortunately for him, Eugene was not someone easy to bully. The muscular cousin, Kagus, continued talking to himself. The reason I'm this buff is because I use a secret sauce. Men and women scream when they see me. For just $9.99, you can have it too. At that moment, another voice interrupted. Are you stupid? Eating sauce lowers intelligence. Clearly, the man only had muscles where his brain should be. We're here to form an alliance with you. As she spoke, Dazara threw the spear in her hand toward Eugene, clearly intending to challenge him. Of course, she added. That's only if you truly have the strength. Eugene thought to himself, let me test her first. Under the proper signals from their elder cousin, the duel officially began. Dazara immediately launched the first attack. But in the very next instant, she abruptly halted. Eugene's unconscious release of overwhelming pressure made her feel as if she couldn't breathe. His entire body was flawless. There wasn't a single opening to exploit. Hurry up, Eugene said calmly. I'm short on time. Feeling belittled, Dazara clenched her teeth and charged forward. Yet no matter how fierce her attacks became, Eugene effortlessly dissolved them. Not only was he completely unharmed, he hadn't even taken a single step. And he didn't forget to taunt her while doing so. Furious, Dazara went all out. In an instant, countless spear afterimages filled the air. Within moments, the two exchanged more than 300 moves. Suddenly, Dazara vanished from sight. She reappeared behind Eugene and thrust her spear straight toward him. Then, her spear was firmly pinned to the ground by Eugene's foot. No matter how hard she pulled, it wouldn't budge. The duel ended just like that. The elder cousin watching nearby was completely stunned. Meanwhile, the second wife was observing Eugene closely, but Eugene felt no fear at all, mainly because he was completely unaware of her intentions. Though she appeared broad-minded, her heart was pitch black. She had never let go of her resentment over Stein's defeat. Finally, she came up with a solution. If everyone was crushed by Eugene, then who would dare say her son was weak? Wouldn't that solve everything? Elsewhere, Eugene was still being pestered by his overly muscular cousin. Kagus and Azara cornered him in the room, following the principle of, if you can't beat him, join him. They insisted on forming a team with Eugene. Eugene, however, calmly replied that he could carve a path through everything by himself. The atmosphere instantly became extremely awkward. 3 days later, 9 selected children stood assembled in front of the maze entrance. On the spot, Roly Beyond demonstrated the compression of magical energy, power that could be formed and released outward. The children stared in amazement at the energy gathering in their hands. As long as light existed in their hearts, whatever they desired could be manifested through magic. The first to successfully summon a weapon was Stare. With a casual motion, she released sword-shaped energy blooms that sliced cleanly through the air. Right after her came Big Cousin, whose manifestation perfectly matched his aggressive style. Then it was Dazara, proficient with spears, followed by the arrogant Stein. The eldest son, Lyde, looked noticeably downcast. Since childhood, his interests had been books and magic. Being forced into the role of a warrior felt suffocating to him. After that came the nameless trio who were clearly there just to fill the numbers. Finally, Eugene completed the lineup with a standard sword and shield setup. Stir glanced at Eugene and asked, "Hey, if we run into each other inside the maze, will you attack me?" Eugene immediately looked toward the family head for clarification. The answer was simple. You may compete or cooperate. After all, you all carry the Reinhardt name. You're family. At the mention of family, Ster's face inexplicably flushed red. She then gave Eugene a strangely meaningful smile. Eugene couldn't make sense of it at all. At that moment, Roly Bian once again produced a magical necklace. This item monitored the physical and mental condition of the participants. If someone experienced excessive mental strain, the necklace would trigger an alarm, prompting Roly Bian to immediately intervene and end the trial. With everything ready, the children began entering the maze one after another. Stir didn't forget to cheer Eugene on. Although they all stepped through the same entrance, each was instantly teleported to a different location. The moment Eugene arrived inside, memories of adventuring with his former companions flooded his mind. He had grown sick and tired of mazes long ago. Still, this was his chance to show what he could really do. His first opponent was a goblin. Yet the moment Eugene saw it, his legs inexplicably went a little weak. The goblin paid no attention to that and immediately lunged forward. Eugene raised his sword to block the attack, then followed up by cleanly severing the goblin's head in a single strike. Big Cousin, on the other hand, showed absolutely no fear. He lifted his sword and charged straight at his goblin. Intimidated by his momentum, the goblin hesitated, but Big Cousin's first swing missed. Still, nothing could stop him. With brute force alone, he cut down several goblins in succession. Both of them passed their tests without issue. Elsewhere, the three fillers had already been eliminated. Their downfall came in the form of slimes, monsters that were both vicious and unsettling. Next, Desera faced the slimes herself. She moved swiftly, dodging with precision and striking at the perfect moments. Unfortunately, the slimes possessed physical immunity. With no way to deal damage, Desera had no choice but to retreat in frustration. Stein's luck, however, was absurdly good. The trap mechanisms around him were so obvious, it was as if they wanted to be noticed. He tested one using a stone, confirming his guess. Pleased with himself, Stein smugly assumed his prior preparations were finally paying off. Ster encountered goblins as well. One rushed at her immediately, but she sidestepped effortlessly and thrust her sword forward. The goblin dropped on the spot. To her, it was trivial. However, as she continued forward, she soon found herself at a dead end. It seemed she had lost her way. Meanwhile, the two examiners were calmly sipping coffee. Roly Bian commented, "Lyde seems quite drawn to magic." Guyard fell into thought. Lyde had loved magic since he was young, but his mother had pushed him toward becoming the family head, forcing him to abandon his passion halfway. Compared to the heroic Baymut, Liad admired wise scholars far more. If he truly has talent, Guyard thought, I might even take him as my disciple. Suddenly, Guyard exclaimed and pointed forward in shock. Eugene had encountered a troll. Without warning, the massive creature raised its fist and smashed downward. Eugene reacted instantly, blocking the blow. The moment the troll entered its recovery phase, Eugene seized the opening and launched a relentless counterattack. His eyes held no trace of fear. Roly Bian frowned. "Is Eugene cheating?" Guyard replied sharply, "This isn't some low-grade monster you planted, is it?" Eugene had no idea how badly his performance was rattling the examiners. To him, this was nothing more than a warm-up. Roly Bian had originally placed the troll simply to teach the children when to flee. He never imagined it would actually be defeated, especially not by a child this young. Only a true genius could accomplish that. Or a complete madman. The word retreat did not exist in Big Cousin's vocabulary. In fact, it was questionable whether he even had a vocabulary at all. He charged straight at the troll, landing every single blow. The monster collapsed. Big Cousin immediately leapt up and drove his sword straight into its body. Though victorious, he had reached his physical limit. His back was riddled with projectiles, and 48 of his ribs were broken. Still, he muttered, "I can't fall here. I'm just tired. Let me rest for a bit," before passing out. Elsewhere, Stein also ran into a troll. Thankfully, he still had the stone trick that worked earlier. Using it again, he confirmed his suspicion. Big creatures really were brainless. Feeling clever, Stein soon encountered Stare, proof they were nearing the maze's center. Eager to redeem himself after losing face in front of her earlier, Stein volunteered to scout ahead. This time he was determined to reclaim his dignity and prove his worth. His eyes practically sparkled with resolve. Stare suddenly asked, "Brother, since this maze is made of illusions, do you think ghosts could exist here?" Stein swallowed hard before answering, "That's impossible." What he didn't realize was that the instant he turned around, a pale hand reached out behind him. The next moment, a blood-soaked figure appeared out of nowhere, terrifying Stein and nearly making him cry, ruining his image in front of his sister once again. It was Dazara. Covered in blood, she looked miserable. Stein had no choice but to support her. At that moment, Dazara deeply missed Big Cousin. Unfortunately, Big Cousin was still fast asleep. But just as her attention slipped for a moment, the ground beneath them suddenly gave way. Fortunately, she didn't fall in. Stein stared at the deep pit ahead and instinctively thought about going around it. However, remembering the admiring look his sister had given him earlier, he decided this wasn't the time to save his magic. He activated Sprint, jumped with all his strength, and barely made it across. He turned back, ready to help his sister, only to see Stare looking completely relaxed as she lightly hopped over the pit with ease. The atmosphere instantly turned awkward. Stein stiffened and said, "Dazara, you won't escape today. I'll personally subdue you." The scene shifted. Somehow the three of them had chased each other all the way to the very center of the maze. Dazara stared ahead and muttered, "That minotaur is enormous. Are you sure this is meant to be a trial?" Eugene, already there, replied calmly, "How did the three of you end up together?" Eugene had arrived first on purpose, letting the others feel involved. He deliberately left the boss untouched so they could try fighting it first. "How considerate of you," Dara scoffed. "So we fight in order of arrival?" "Doesn't your conscience hurt?" she added. Eugene shrugged. "If you're scared, just stand aside." Naturally, the stubborn Dazara refused to back down. She wiped the blood from her face and marched straight toward the monster. At that moment, the arrogant young master spoke up. "If we follow that order, Eugene won't even get a chance to fight." Eugene smirked. "If you win, I'll call you Big Brother for the rest of my life." Happiness struck instantly. "Little brother," Stein thought proudly. "Watch how your big brother shows his power." As Dazara advanced, the Minotaur slowly opened its eyes. Fear lingered in her chest, but she still charged forward, spear in hand. When the monster's massive palm came crashing down, she spun gracefully and dodged. She spun again to stabilize herself, then thrust her spear forward with full force. It didn't pierce the skin. Dazara froze in shock. Before she could react, the Minotaur grabbed her in its hand, but instead of crushing her, it casually flung her away. She flew straight back to the starting area, completely outclassed. Stare frowned. Why did it throw her away? Eugene answered flatly, because the outcome was already decided the moment she got caught. Next up, Stein stepped forward, deliberately throwing Eugene an arrogant glance. Eugene said nothing, but his expression said it all. Damn it, Stein thought. This guy is infuriating. Watch carefully. Stein gathered all his magic into his sword. A brilliant, glowing greatsword formed. Though the sword aura wouldn't last long, he was confident it was enough to finish the monster. Then, in the next instant, the glow vanished. Stein froze in disbelief. The truth was that the family head wanted to assess everyone's innate talents, so offensive magic was sealed inside the maze. Stein still stood there trying to look intimidating. Eugene commented lazily, "If you're scared of losing, you can head back now." Pushed into a corner, Stein shouted, "Don't underestimate me. Even without sword aura, I'll still be your big brother." The monster responded by reaching out to grab him. It missed, only getting its arm scratched by Stein's blade. Stein began dodging and spinning, showing off his movements, but all his attacks were shallow and ineffective. Against plot monsters, Stein thought, the best move is cutting tendons or legs. Just as he thought he'd found his chance, the Minotaur slammed its knee into him, sending him flying. Stein was stunned. Is that really a move a brainless beast could come up with? The monster smoothly grabbed him midair and tossed him aside. At least he didn't land face first. Eugene commented, "That was quick. You came back already?" Eugene then gestured for Stair to step up, but she immediately forfeited. How unfortunate. No chance to see the beautiful girl get thrown. Having waited long enough, Eugene decided to put an end to this farce. Everyone had already played their part. It was time to wrap up and go home for dinner. As Eugene approached, the Minotaur readied itself. Where should I start cutting? The monster's fist came down, but Eugene dodged cleanly. He slipped past its arm, using the momentum to leap straight onto the monster's head and steady himself. The Minotaur swung upward at Eugene, but he evaded just in time. The punch landed squarely on the monster's own face, further dulling its already limited brain. Eugene seized the opening and attacked. His body split into multiple afterimages. Extreme ghost sword technique. Storm form. Everyone was stunned. Impossible. Completely impossible. Eugene's blade targeted the Minotaur's corrupted artery. His eyes were unwavering. One decisive thrust. The fight ended instantly. Eugene walked back toward the others and said casually, "See? Just basic operations." Stein wanted to shout something, but he couldn't understand it. Why was Eugene fearless? No, excited? Deep down, Stein wanted to become someone like him. At that moment, the weapon in Eugene's hand dissolved into shimmering light. The Minotaur's body slowly scattered into golden particles as well. The bloodline ceremony was over. The two examiners who had witnessed everything were deeply shaken. No matter whose child it was, this was something worth showing off. In truth, Roly Beyond's original goal had been to emphasize teamwork, having the children cooperate to defeat the Minotaur. He never imagined Eugene would clear everything alone. Guillard smiled faintly. Eugene has always been strict with himself. He's obsessed with training, a true martial prodigy. But Roly Beyond began to worry. Eugene had defeated every main house child. If a branch family member outshone the main line in the bloodline ceremony, it could spark dangerous ambitions. Thus, he proposed that Guillard adopt Eugene as his son. For Guillard, it wasn't a bad suggestion at all. But before anything else, it was time to congratulate the children on their return. When he heard that Eugene had effortlessly killed the troll, the older cousin was completely stunned. How could someone with such a skinny, fragile-looking body possess that much strength? If Eugene were to use his secret sauce on top of that, wouldn't he be capable of punching heroes and kicking demon kings? And yet, throughout all this, the younger children barely contributed at all. None of this dampened the family head's cheerful mood. He had originally arranged a magnificent banquet, but since Eugene cleared the maze far faster than expected, he could only send the children off to rest first. At that moment, the family had specifically summoned Eugene, which naturally caught Stair's attention. She immediately protested, "Are you taking him to the treasury? I want to go too. I want to go. I want to go." However, everyone ignored her. Frustrated, she shouted, "You'll never grow taller, Eugene." While walking, the family head remarked, "I've heard you're proficient with many kinds of weapons." Eugene replied calmly, "Just basic handling." Inside the maze, Eugene had used a sword and shield, but when fighting Stein and Dezera, he switched to a spear, perfectly reflecting the Reinhardt family's tradition of weapon mastery. The great Behemoth had mastered all 18 types of weapons, and Helmo was also known as a weapon expert. Yet in fairy tales, he was referred to as Foolish Helmo. After all, every team needs a fool, right? Someone who never won a fight, yet remained overly confident. In the end, he even stepped in to take a blade for his companions. The family had said, "Compared to Behemoth, I actually prefer Helmo." Hearing that, Eugene didn't know how to react. He never imagined the family head was a fan of his past self. That alone could have fueled his self-admiration for an entire year. Soon they arrived at the entrance to the treasury. The family head stated, You're the first person, aside from the family head himself, to enter the underground treasury. Eugene was shocked by this and immediately asked, "Are there holy swords inside?" "There are," the family head replied, "but you won't be able to draw them either." Since the era of the Great Bamut, no one had been able to earn the holy sword's recognition. Eugene thought to himself, "Who are you looking down on?" Standing before the treasury gate and witnessing its magical opening mechanism, Eugene finally understood why the family head rarely came here. As the lion statue's eyes emitted an eerie glow, the massive doors slowly opened. "Go in alone," the family head said. "If I go with you, it will interfere with your results." After bowing respectfully, Eugene entered the treasury by himself. Naturally, he headed straight for the holy sword. This was no ordinary weapon. It had existed for centuries and had only ever recognized one master, Bimut. But today it would surely submit to Eugene. After all, they were old acquaintances. Surely it would give him some face. Eugene grasped the hilt with both hands. "Come out, little baby." Yet no matter how much strength he used, the sword refused to budge. In reality, ever since the holy sword slew the Slaughter Demon King, it had mostly been used as a portable flashlight for the team. Thinking about it that way, it wasn't all that impressive. A real man doesn't abandon the entire forest for a single tree. A real man keeps his options open. Predator Surfy turned out to be a magic staff that required both magical and martial cultivation to use effectively. The problem was, it was simply too low quality and didn't suit Eugene at all. Skip. Kalpis needed time to heat up before unleashing Dragon Breath. Storm Sword Wild could summon the Wind Spirit King. Finoa could fire lightning regardless of distance. The Dolan Shield could redirect all attacks into the void. And there was also this serpent tail weapon. Honestly, choosing any one of them would have been worthwhile. But where were Fenrir 6 and Yan Mo? After all, 300 years had passed. The best items had long since disappeared. At present, the optimal choice was Wild. Elemental magic was notoriously difficult to master, and possessing Wild was essentially like having a cheat code. Still, having come this far, Eugene decided to look around a bit more. Aside from magical weapons, the treasury also stored decorative artifacts with commemorative significance. Suddenly, Eugene froze. He picked up a necklace in front of him and examined it over and over. It was his own necklace, a keepsake from Helmo's parents. He had been wearing it at the moment of his death. Why was it here? Did my good friend retrieve my body? It seemed that after his death, his companions hadn't abandoned him. Helmo had fallen in battle at the sealed Demon King's castle, but Bimut had made a pact with the sealed Demon King and placed Helmo's relics here. What exactly was Bimut thinking? Eugene wasn't blaming Bimut or his companions. They must have had their reasons. He simply wanted to know the contents of that pact. Why did Bimut, who had never been close to women, end up marrying so many wives? After being cursed by the Demon King, he should have been completely erased after death. So why was he reborn? Although many weapons in the treasury were extremely tempting, Eugene couldn't leave his relics behind. A moment later, the family head was baffled by Eugene's choice. Even more confusing was how such a necklace had ended up in the treasury. The craftsmanship was crude and outdated. It wouldn't even sell for enough money to buy a cup of instant noodles. Moreover, after testing, it showed absolutely no registration records whatsoever. Completely absurd. The family head said, "This is definitely not a Reinhardt treasure. It shouldn't exist in the treasury." Eugene replied, "But I took it from inside." "This necklace has no value at all," the family head said. "Even so, you still want it?" "I'm sure," Eugene answered. Still, the family head remained cautious about items of unknown origin. He planned to have a mage inspect it to confirm whether it was magical. It would be troublesome if some embarrassing images of an old grandpa were sealed inside. He would ensure it was safe before handing it over. Since Eugene hadn't chosen a Reinhardt treasure, the family had told him he could return to the treasury and select another item. Happiness came without warning. Who would have thought the family head would be this generous? truly deserving of the title of Helmo's biggest fan. There was no need to hesitate. The decision was made. It would be this one, Storm Sword Wild. Eugene felt a surge of excitement as he gripped the blade. After hearing his choice, Dezera questioned him. You're clearly excellent with a spear. Why didn't you choose a long spear instead? Whether it's Kalpus or Rontes, both are stronger than this sword. The older cousin immediately cut in. Move aside. A man's true romance lies in massive axes and warhammers. Even if you can't lift it now, just come home with me. I'll give you my secret sauce. A warrior's fate belongs to the hammer Zygrass. That's what a real man should wield. Watching the two of them bicker endlessly, Eugene felt a headache coming on. Still, he hadn't seen any weapons belonging to former demon kings in the treasury. They were probably sealed away somewhere by Behemoth. The sword Eugene selected was far from ordinary. Although it wasn't widely known, it had been blessed by the Elf King. In the future, when cultivating magical power, it could even be used to summon elves. And honestly, didn't it perfectly match his color scheme? Unfortunately, the sibling pair had no intention of indulging Eugene. They were determined to settle their argument right then and there. Eugene chose not to get further involved. After all, this was the first real sword he had ever held in his life. Today, he absolutely had to show off. Eugene began swinging the sword. His movements were powerful yet smooth, effortless yet elegant. Grace never goes out of fashion, and this was a kind of charm Eugene needed to master. Truly, 1 minute on stage meant a full minute of hard work behind the scenes. The technique looked simple, but in reality, it was anything but easy. Meanwhile, the others were inspecting Eugene's necklace. After the mage performed a series of flashy magical procedures on the spot, he found absolutely nothing. I can't believe this came from Reinhardt's treasury, the mage said. It's completely ordinary, about as ordinary as it gets. Unconvinced, Rolian decided to dig deeper. The mage raised his middle finger. Magical power existed everywhere in this world, meaning most objects carried traces of it. By reading residual magic, one could glimpse related memories. The mage slowly injected magical energy into the necklace. Instantly, images surfaced in his mind. About 100 years ago, a discounted necklace bought from the capital's wholesale market. Nothing special at all. With confirmation that the necklace contained nothing hidden, the family had decided it could be given to Eugene later. Gazing at the young man practicing swordsmanship under the moonlight outside the window, he unconsciously showed a gentle, almost motherly smile. He planned to accept Roly Beyond's proposal and formally adopt Eugene Reinhardt as his son. The next morning, Eugene was playing around with the young maid when Reinhardt family's eternal bachelor, Jewin, suddenly appeared. He absolutely refused to let anyone escape singlehood before him. Though Eugene was inwardly annoyed, he still bowed politely, intending to get rid of the man as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, John saw straight through his intentions. He grabbed Eugene and prepared to drag him away. There were already very few unmarried maids left in the household. He couldn't allow Eugene to snatch an advantage. Without delay, he dragged Eugene off to see the family head. Eugene had no choice but to comply. At this time, family head Guide had already been waiting. He truly had matters he wanted to discuss with Eugene. The first topic was Eugene's necklace. A mage had already extracted the memories within it using magic. There was nothing unusual, just a normal necklace. Hearing this, Eugene was instantly shaken. Magical memory reading was a spell created by Sia. If the mage found nothing, then someone must have added new magic afterward. Who could it have been? Behemoth or Sia? But now wasn't the time to dig into the past. Getting the necklace first was more important. The family head was straightforward. If Eugene liked it, he could keep it. Then the family head continued, Eugene, there's another matter I called you here for today. It may seem sudden, but it's good news. Upon hearing this, Eugene already had a guess. He replied, Stare is indeed very cute, and I do like her a little, but I don't want to get married right now. No wonder, even after he embarrassed her brother before, she never seemed upset and always smiled sweetly. So she had been waiting for this moment all along. Eugene added, We're still young. It's really not appropriate to talk about marriage. Stop, the family head said. What are you thinking, Eugene? I never intended for you to marry Stare. The atmosphere instantly turned awkward. Eugene wanted nothing more than to crawl into a hole. At that moment, he wished he could just die on the spot. Then, what do you mean? Eugene asked. I only want to adopt you as my son, the family head replied. Yet you're already setting your sights on my daughter. That only made Eugene even more embarrassed. No, please don't misunderstand, he said quickly. The family head continued. What do you think would happen if I told Stair what you just said? Then you might as well kill me, Eugene replied. The family head then explained that he would also bring Giard over and treat him like a brother. His only wish was for Eugene to return to the main family. This would be immensely beneficial for Eugene. Of course, the children were still young. In a few years, it wouldn't be impossible for Eugene to pursue Stair. Eugene had thought only Stair was interested in him, but it turned out this old man wanted him too. Not only would he provide Eugene with unlimited money, but he would also teach him supreme magical techniques. Cultivating magic in this world was extremely difficult. First, one needed magic stones from high-level monsters, which were outrageously expensive. Second, proper guidance from a powerful mentor was required. Anyone who could even get started within 2.5 years was considered a genius. As a member of a branch family's branch, Giard clearly didn't have access to such resources or ability. Eugene had always assumed that his future path would be one of reckless, solitary growth. But if he could return to the main family, that would be nothing short of perfect. Just imagine living a life where you didn't have to check prices while buying groceries. Of course, the concrete details still needed to be discussed between Giard and the family head. Eugene then expressed that he wanted to learn magic from the strongest individual, driven by curiosity about how powerful the current family head truly was. Hearing this, Guy smiled faintly. The strongest person in the Reinhardt family wasn't him, but rather that seemingly unreliable Jiwin. This was something Eugene had never expected. The family head suddenly asked, Be honest, Eugene. When did you start having thoughts about Stair? Eugene replied helplessly, Can we please not talk about that? After awkwardly taking his leave, Eugene caught a trace of an intoxicating fragrance. It was clearly perfume extracted and concentrated through high heat, drifting from the corner ahead. Whoever it was hadn't moved at all, obviously waiting for quite some time. Sure enough, when Eugene reached the corner, the second wife, Anna, appeared right on cue. She even pretended it was a coincidence. The acting was painfully stiff. By contrast, the surprise on Eugene's face was perfectly timed. Eugene bowed politely. Hello, I'm Eugene Reinhardt from Quito. Anna replied, I didn't expect to run into you here. You were speaking with the family head for quite a while. Eugene asked calmly. Is there something you wanted to talk to me about? The corner of Anna's mouth twitched slightly, revealing her fiery temper. How could this country bumpkin Eugene be so blunt? But considering he had completely swept the bloodline ceremony, his future growth would undoubtedly be astonishing. It was far wiser to maintain a friendly relationship with someone like him. When the time came, she could simply push Stair into his arms. And wouldn't that put him entirely under her control? Suppressing her calculations, Anna skipped the pleasantries and directly asked what Eugene had discussed with the family head. Eugene replied that since it was a private conversation, he couldn't disclose it. Seeing that Eugene was unmoved, and even placing her in an awkward position, Anna had no choice but to backtrack, explaining that she was only asking casually. She added, You and Stein had some misunderstandings before. I'm speaking on his behalf to apologize. There's no need, Eugene replied. After all, we're family. At the word family, Anna frowned slightly. Though the statement wasn't incorrect, hearing it from Eugene somehow felt irritating. They exchanged a few more casual words before Eugene found an excuse to leave. He had no desire to get entangled with this woman any further. Anna stood there, silently, watching Eugene walk away. Behind her fan, her expression was dark. Little brat. Once you fall into my hands, I'll make sure you regret it. Meanwhile, Giard had initially believed that the bloodline ceremony would force Eugene to accept reality. Who could have predicted that Eugene would instead seize first place with ease? Giard was moved to tears by pride. 2 days later, Giard finally arrived at the main family estate. Even then, he could hardly believe it. But when he saw the young man waving at him from afar, that innocent smile on his face, Giard hesitated no longer. He rushed forward and hugged Eugene tightly. So what if it's the main family? So what if there's a difference in status? Weren't they all crushed by my son anyway? Holding Eugene, Giard wept openly. In that moment, his heart was filled with nothing but pride. Eugene laughed and said, "Didn't I tell you before I left? Easy win." "You didn't doubt me, did you?" Only then did Giard notice Giard standing nearby and hurriedly bowed in greeting. After all, his child had just defeated the other man's children. It was better to stay humble. The family head said, "Although I don't want to interrupt your father-son reunion, could you come inside for a discussion?" Giard agreed readily, though he still looked back at Eugene with reluctance. Inside, Giard directly explained his intention to adopt Eugene as his son, and also mentioned that Giard could remain in the main family afterward. After a moment of thought, Giard suddenly stood and apologized. He was worried that the other three children wouldn't accept Eugene, and even more worried that Eugene would be ostracized within the family. Giard understood his concern. Even if Eugene became his adopted son, the Council of Elders would never allow a branch member to inherit the position of family head. As long as there were no restrictions placed on Eugene's growth, he could still become brothers with the main family's sons. Giard also knew that only within the main family could Eugene gain more opportunities. As a father, he had to make the right decision, though he couldn't help feeling a sense of loss. Seeing his father's condition, Eugene knew this matter had dealt him a heavy blow. Giard noticed the storm sword at Eugene's waist, a weapon he could never afford, even if he sold everything he owned. Despite his reluctance, he still told Eugene that he hoped he would become the main family's adopted son. However, living under someone else's roof would surely bring many hardships in the future. Eugene smiled with confidence. He wouldn't be bullied anywhere, and he would never forget that his name was given by his late mother, and that his true father would always be Giard Reinhardt. Eugene had no intention of becoming the family head. Whether others believed that or not was another matter entirely. After all, both of the family heads' wives were far from easy to deal with. When faced with dissatisfaction or suppression, Eugene had only two options: ignore it or confront it directly. Giard's arrival not only took over Eugene's room, but also his maid. In the end, Eugene had no choice but to endure it alone. At the main family banquet, Big Cousin's father was enthusiastically promoting his secret sauce. Eugene seriously suspected their family was running a pyramid scheme. The second wife watched everything coldly from the corner. Stein sat there looking like a sulky, fragile little thing. "Lift your head," the second wife said. "Mind your posture." Hearing this, Stein immediately straightened his back and raised his chin. The second wife then began lecturing Stein in earnest. From now on, he would inevitably be compared to Eugene. After all, this was the first time the main family had ever lost to a branch family. Stein could feel humiliated by this, but he absolutely could not give up because of it. If he wanted to become the family head, he would need to work twice as hard in the future. More importantly, he had to start getting along well with Eugene, so that Eugene could eventually become his right-hand man. For the proud young master, this was a serious dilemma. Getting along with Eugene was no easy task. Elsewhere, Stir ran into Eugene. She looked at him and said, "I heard you like me and even proposed to father." Rumors. Complete nonsense. Nothing like that had ever happened. Stir continued, "Then what's this drawing about? Did you secretly draw it?" "I'm only 13, Eugene." At that moment, Eugene felt that this house no longer had any place for him. Meanwhile, everyone was discussing Led's arrangements for learning magic. Led would head to Yarao together with the mage, though whether he could successfully become a disciple would still depend on his magical aptitude. Of course, the mage would also submit several recommendations on Led's behalf, giving him more opportunities. At the same time, the mage promised that Led would not suffer any discrimination and would be provided with a proper learning environment. As for Led himself, he felt unexpectedly relieved. In truth, it didn't matter where he went. He simply wanted to escape this suffocating household. However, the first wife clearly disliked emotional farewells. She sternly told Led that he must seize this opportunity. He was her son, Tongs's son, and he had to grow strong. Even while in Yao, he was absolutely forbidden from slacking off. This frightened Led so much that he hurriedly ran to his father for help. Giard had no way of dealing with his wife. Tongs appeared indifferent on the surface, speaking calmly like a mother giving parting advice. But inwardly, she was already in turmoil. That old woman must be celebrating right now. Still, she had no other choice but to place her hopes on Led, working hard in Yarao and returning in glory. The next day, Led departed for Yarao with the mage. The other participants also returned to their own homes, while Eugene prepared to begin cultivating magical power. In this world, there were roughly two paths to magical cultivation: body training methods and breathing techniques. In his previous life, Eugene had practiced body training. Later, under the guidance of Sia and Bemut, he switched to breathing techniques. Eugene followed Jiwin into the depths of the forest. The Reinhardt family's spiritual vein was not a naturally formed one. It had been personally created by Bemut 300 years ago. Jiwin explained that the younger one began cultivating magic, the better. The main family's children all started at 6 years old. The twins took 3 days to sense magical power. Led took about a week. For someone Eugene's age, it would normally take around a month. Even with Jiwin's assistance, it would likely still take 10 days. Jiwin hoped Eugene wouldn't feel discouraged. Eugene, however, was completely unconcerned. 10 minutes should be more than enough. Just watch. The next moment, Jiwin began casting magic. To Eugene, magical power appeared like fireflies scattered across a dark night sky, clear, bright, and unmistakable. Wherever it shimmered, he could immediately pinpoint it. Easy. Seeing this, Jiwin stared in disbelief. Impossible. Absolutely impossible. Something had to be wrong. He couldn't comprehend it at all. But sensing magical power was only the first step. What followed was a deeper understanding of breathing techniques. The Reinhardt family's highest-level breathing method was the white flame style. When activated, magical power would manifest as dense white flames, bursting outward like a lion's mane. Yet Jiwin discovered that before he had even finished explaining, Eugene had already begun circulating magical power. Eugene adjusted his breathing, slowly gathering magical power, then guided it into his heart according to the airflow of the white flame style. Jiwin was stunned. This has to be fake. This is a breathing technique, not simple breathing. Did the family head send someone to prank me? Eugene's actions completely overturned Jiwin's understanding. At this moment, Eugene wasn't paying attention to Jiwin at all. With memories from his previous life, sensing magical power and operating breathing techniques felt extremely simple. But this body absorbed magical power far too easily. Every breath increased the magic within him. Was this the blessing of his old companion's bloodline? Worthy of Bemut indeed. Even the size of the core was impressive. Looking at it this way, being reborn as his grandson wasn't such a bad deal after all. When Eugene finished cultivating, the atmosphere turned awkward. Jiwin didn't know what to say. After a pause, he said, "It seems you have a bit of talent in magic cultivation. Just a little stronger than I was back then. But moderation is important. Let's stop for today." On the way back, Jiwin explained the later stages of the white flame style. When magical power reached a certain level, the core would split, allowing the body to store more magic. These split cores would resonate with one another and were known as stars. In the Reinhardt family's history, only Bemut had reached 10 stars. Jiwin and the family head were both 6-star cultivators. The current young masters and misses were all 1-star, though the twins were expected to reach 2-star next year. They had begun cultivating at 6 years old and spent 8 years reaching 2-star. Eugene's talent, however, was slightly better. As long as he didn't slack off, he should advance a bit faster. Hearing this, Eugene cheerfully promised that he would definitely cultivate diligently. "You foolish weaklings. Soon you'll feel my terror." Returning to the manor, Jun decided to first report today's situation to the family head and let Eugene rest first. But this bit of fatigue was nothing to Eugene. He could still do something interesting. What a coincidence. The little maid encountered Eugene returning. She ran over wanting to hug him, but fortunately Eugene noticed and stopped her in time, having her fetch the storm sword instead, just right to test if he could summon an elf and sign a contract. Eugene then held his breath and concentrated, slowly infusing magical power into the sword. Suddenly, the heavens and earth changed color. Wind rose and clouds surged. A massive tornado formed out of thin air, and from within this eye of the storm came a voice. "Are you Helmo?" Eugene remembered this voice. The owner of this voice was none other than the Storm Elf King, Tanfist. Eugene shouted, "Tell me quickly, Tanfist, why didn't Baymut kill the Demon King?" Tanfist said, "I cannot know Baymut's intentions." The battle at that time was extremely brutal. In the end, only Bimut and the reclusive Demon King remained, but during the final battle, Baymut sheathed his sword. Eugene said, "Bimut made a pact with the Demon King. Tell me what the content of that pact was." Tanfist said, "I don't know the pact's content." "The moment Baymut sheathed his sword, I died," Eugene said. "How can you not know this or that?" But the Elf King indicated there was no more time. Under normal circumstances, Eugene's little bit of magical power wouldn't be nearly enough. It was because it sensed a familiar soul that he insisted on opening the door. Though Eugene still wanted to make things clear, his body could no longer continue to support him. He directly collapsed unconscious from magical exhaustion. This scared the little maid on the side. How did Eugene collapse? When Eugene woke up again, it was already deep in the night. His head hurt as if he'd drunk fake alcohol, and his hands were still trembling. But he was also very happy to meet past companions again. The little maid who entered saw Eugene awake, and finally put her worried heart at ease. Though seeing him trembling his right hand on the bed was quite strange, she didn't pay attention to these details and quickly went to call the family heads over. Soon the two came to Eugene's room. Guy quickly inquired about the day's strange phenomena. Had he summoned an elf about this? Eugene didn't know what to say, making such a big commotion and summoning the Elf King. This seriously didn't match his consistently low-key and sincere image. He better find an excuse to fool them. Eugene said, "I accidentally summoned the Elf King. I don't know how it happened either." The two had originally thought he'd only summoned an elf, never expecting him to bring out the Elf King. This was completely unreasonable. Eugene indicated the Elf King was a bit tsundere, actually disdaining that he wasn't strong enough now, but looked forward to meeting again in the future, then returned to the elf realm. Upon hearing this, Guyard's beard twisted with laughter. Couldn't help but sigh that the Reinhardt family had successors, mastering white flame style in seconds during the day. Then a little wave of the hand produced a golden legend. His future achievements would be immeasurable. He then quickly told Eugene to rest well. Originally, after the bloodline ceremony, he planned to continue traveling and training with Jin, but now he would have Jiwin stay to properly teach Eugene. Of course, the twin siblings would also follow along. He told Eugene to be prepared. Meanwhile, hearing about Eugene's deeds, Stein and Ster were quite affected. The two finally began seriously cultivating. They just didn't know yet that the gap between them and Eugene would only grow larger in the future. After all, if effort were useful, what would be the point of rebirth? The next day, when Eugene woke up again, he couldn't wait to pick up the storm sword. As magical power flowed in, a small elf instantly appeared. Obviously, this wasn't the Elf King. "Where is your king? Have Tanfist come see me." The elf wasn't going to indulge Eugene, directly charging up for a ramming attack to his forehead, then instantly disappeared. Though Eugene still had many questions, he could only wait until he became stronger in the future. Back then, he and his 4 good friends had swept through the Demon King's castle, but sadly his fallen brother's DPS wasn't enough. But it didn't matter. In the future, he would slowly search for his companion's traces and eventually kill the remaining 2 Demon Kings. Time flew by and 3 years passed. Eugene's white flame style reached 3 stars, but for Eugene, this was still far from enough. It was time to go to Yarao to learn magic. Stein was shocked. He said, "What are you talking about?" Though the proud young master couldn't beat Eugene, he never gave up verbally. Who knew Eugene would directly explode on the spot? The white flame aura produced by 3-star resonance directly blinded Stein's eyes. Stein said, You clearly started cultivating magical power 7 years later than me, yet reached 3 stars first. What's wrong with you? Eugene said. Can't help it. I'm a genius. Simply cultivating magical power can no longer satisfy me, so I need to expand new skills, Stein said. I really want to kill you. Eugene said, Sure, stand up and see if I'll beat you up. Stein could only turn his head proudly away. He couldn't admit he just didn't want Eugene to leave, so he immediately brought up Led's failure case. Lied due to mediocre aptitude, failed to successfully become a disciple, though he got into the magic power through connections that was just wasting time. Eugene was quite angry at Stein's disparagement of Big Brother, scaring Stein into trembling. Having no choice, Stein could only scratch his head and say that if Eugene went to Yarao, Ster would definitely be very sad about this. Eugene didn't believe it at all. Ster hadn't talked to him for a long time and didn't train together, so she couldn't possibly be sad. Watching Eugene walk away, Stein angrily kicked away his longsword. Damn, Eugene serves you right being single. Meanwhile, the family head who learned of this was also quite surprised. The family head said, Reaching 3 stars at your age is unprecedented. Learning magic would only waste your talent. But Eugene completely ignored the family head's persuasion, determined to leave. The family head had no choice, and could only seriously warn Eugene that he absolutely must not touch black magic. Yarao had a black magic tower where black mages gathered, though people's understanding of black magic had changed somewhat now. As descendants of the great Bimut, the Reinhardt family must forever remain wary of black magic. After saying goodbye to the family head, Eugene prepared to return to his bedroom. Passing by Ster's door, she called out to him. She didn't understand why Eugene, who had already learned elf magic, still wanted to go to the distant place of Yarao to learn magic. She said, If you don't train properly, my brother and I will surpass you soon. Eugene said, That would be perfect. Training together would be more interesting then. Besides, you haven't been training with me anyway. Stayer said, If I train with you in the future, would you not leave? Eugene directly refused. He was determined to go to Yarrow and didn't know how long he'd be away. Giard had completely adapted to life in the main family. Seeing Eugene had no more attachments. The girl quickly said that if he left, Juin would be very sad and her brother would be very sad too. But none of this would affect Eugene's decision. He told Ster to train well and prepared to leave. Ster quickly poked her head out to call to Eugene walking away. Are you really leaving? But Eugene just waved his hand without looking back. Ster was very sad. There was something she ultimately couldn't bring herself to say. Actually, she also didn't want Eugene to leave. Yarao was a magic city floating in the air. For just 9,099, you could enjoy aerial delivery service. In nearly 200 years, there had been only dozens of crash accidents, but not one person had left a bad review. It could be said to be Yarrow's most popular means of transportation. Eugene just felt speechless. The people who crashed were dead. How could they leave bad reviews? Eugene quickly interrupted the tour guide's sightseeing spiel. Such awkward chat was purely a waste of time. Better to go to Senna's residence first. Upon hearing this, the tour guide became even more excited, because Senya's residence was a must-visit check-in spot for tourists. About 200 years ago, Sia left a letter saying she was going into seclusion and then disappeared. No one knew where she went. Many mages tried to track her whereabouts, but to this day, there had been no discoveries. The tour guide had a theory. He believed Sena went alone to the demon realm Hamudar, because the day she disappeared was exactly the death anniversary of Helmo. She must have been unable to forget her fallen companion. Legend had it that Helmo had always secretly loved Lady Sia, and before Helmo died, he had confessed his love to Sena. What an enviable romance. Eugene said, What nonsense are you spouting? Upon hearing this, the tour guide looked completely confused. Looking at the bewildered tour guide, Eugene was at a loss too and quickly lied that he disliked melodramatic story plots, just wanted to know other theories about Sia's seclusion. Sia greatly detested demons and black magic, and once firmly opposed establishing the Black Magic Tower. So it was also possible that Sena had been assassinated by black mages. Mere black mages assassinating Sena. Eugene naturally didn't believe it, but the bulging veins on his hands revealed his inner unease. Individual black mages were naturally not a threat, but the demons of Himuda had always been supporting the Black Magic Tower, and they certainly harbored deep hatred for Sia. Eugene secretly swore to find out the truth. He didn't believe Senna was really dead. There were many people queuing to visit Sia's residence. With the Reinhardt family's reputation, Eugene successfully cut in line. Though he still didn't know what had happened in the past, this was where S.A. had lived. He would definitely be able to find traces Senna left behind. Eugene believed they would definitely meet again. A girl who dreamed of marriage and children remained single for over 100 years, only because the boy she liked had fallen before the Demon King's palace. Obviously at the prime of youth, yet having to save the world. If everything had ended, she should have enjoyed life properly, Sia asked. What do you plan to do in the future? Helmo. Morin wants to become a king. Helmo had never thought about such questions before and had never seen Senna look so gentle. This was a scene he could never have dreamed of. Not knowing how to answer, he could only ask Seiya about her future plans in return. Who knew that S.A. would suddenly freeze, speechless for a moment? After a while, she said she wanted to live like an ordinary person, getting married and having children frequently, then becoming an old grandmother and slowly aging. She should have found a good man to live a stable life with. So why did she live alone for 100 years and never marry? Sa, what were you really thinking? Eugene moved to his depths, instinctively reached out to touch. Suddenly the guard said, "Please visit rationally. No touching allowed. I'll be watching you." Just when the feeling was coming on strong, one touch would have been enough. But this manager was really asking for a beating. Helpless Eugene no longer obsessed over the portrait. Underground in Sia's mansion was a huge library. There might be clues that Senna had left here. Suddenly, the guard said again, "Please visit rationally. No touching allowed. I said I'd be watching you." Eugene found himself unable to resist wanting to beat him up. But now there were more important things to do. His necklace had mysteriously appeared in the Reinhardt treasury. The Wind Spirit King had also recognized him the moment he appeared. It was clear that his rebirth was definitely not a coincidence. Someone had definitely manipulated it. If it was Senna, then she would surely have left clues. But there were no discoveries here at all. "I never thought you were such a mysterious person. See, if you wanted me to do something, couldn't you have just said so properly?" Taking advantage of the moment when the manager turned around, Eugene said, "Senna, if you're unhappy, come find me. I'll be waiting for you." Eugene knew the portrait couldn't possibly respond. He just hoped C was still alive, hoped there was still a chance to meet again. Although it was already dark, the tour guide was still guarding the entrance. Generous Eugene directly gave him a tip. He said, "There's something I want to ask you. Do you know my big brother lied Reinhardt?" Upon hearing this, the tour guide suddenly became nervous. He didn't know how to explain the situation to Eugene. Young Master Led was sworn enemies with gambling and drugs. He was well known throughout Yarrow. He was the man who single-handedly raised the GDP of Yarrow's entire service industry. He was simply the trendsetter for successful men's choices, and he was particularly devoted to succubi, being a member of the Reinhardt clan, yet mixing with the demon race. Upon hearing this, Eugene's fists instantly hardened. He couldn't wait to go and cut down the succubi right now. But after all, he had come out to investigate. He couldn't act rashly, and just bringing Lied to justice wouldn't solve anything. He needed to deal with it from the source. It seemed necessary to conduct a thorough investigation into what was really going on. After all, he needed to let the facts speak. Originally, Lied, who had once yearned for magic, had encountered a succubus. His whole person began to mature rapidly. Seeing his decadent big brother Eugene was furious. How did Lied become like this? Although he really wanted to drag him over and beat him up. Obviously, catching him red-handed would make him learn his lesson, in case there were some hidden circumstances. He could also try to save this wayward youth. After Lied was refused entry, the two chatted about the purpose of this trip. Although Eugene wanted to learn magic, he wouldn't become a disciple of Rolbon. With Led's precedent, it wasn't convenient to use connections again, and Eugene wanted to try self-studying magic. This couldn't help but make the lady mage on the side laugh out loud. But before the lady mage could speak further, an explosion suddenly occurred upstairs. As everyone knew, the Red Magic Tower specialized in summoning magic. And before summoning something out, it was no different from opening a blind box. Two cute dogs rushed out. Unfortunately, before they could get far, they were caught by giant red hands. They were crushed in an instant. These hands belonged unmistakably to Tower Master Ban. His mood wasn't very good at the moment. He directly lamented that his magic tower was full of idiots, thinking they could summon whatever they called by putting their hands together. 3 mage apprentices hurriedly said it was all a misunderstanding, but they still got expelled from school by the angry Ban. Maybe this was the charm of summoning magic. After the crisis was resolved, he quietly descended. He hurriedly assured Eugene that this was just an accident, that learning magic was still very interesting. Having not seen each other for years, Rolban's appearance hadn't changed at all. But Eugene, who had now cultivated magical power, could feel that he was very strong, worthy of being one of the 5 tower masters at that time. Since Eugene planned to self-study, Ban wouldn't interfere, but he still had the lady mage help Eugene. During his stay in Yarrow, all meals and accommodation were provided. He could also visit the tower's library at any time. Over the next month, Eugene quickly entered study mode. During the day, he immersed himself in the library, reading books. Before bed, he honed his magical power and martial arts, sleeping only 9 hours each day, yet showing no signs of fatigue. He had completely mastered magic from beginner to expert level. The magic classification system established by Senya 300 years ago was still in use today. Mages used magical power to weave circles within their bodies to cast magic. When a circle's magical power reached its maximum value, the number of circles would increase. Circles were also the optimal magical formula verified over the past 300 years. Now, only elves and black magic didn't use circle-based entry methods. But Eugene didn't want to use the circle method for entry. Instead, he planned to use the Reinhardt magical power application method, the lady mage said. But martial arts and magic use completely different tracks for magical power application. If you derail, you'll definitely die on the spot. Unfortunately, the lady mage couldn't dissuade Eugene at all. She could only summon her staff to prepare for some physical persuasion. But as Eugene circulated the magical power around his body, the lady mage could hardly believe her eyes. Eugene had mastered magic in just 30 days. He lived like he had cheat codes enabled. With a small wave of his hand, a fireball appeared. No hand seals needed. Instantly called out magic missiles. This completely overturned the lady mage's understanding. She couldn't comprehend what a rebirth cheat was. These special effects looked like she definitely couldn't handle them. She quickly summoned an iron golem to tank some damage. Eugene's magic shockwave shot straight out, piercing right through the iron golem. Moments later, Ban examined the golem's remains. He couldn't believe this was magic cast by Eugene. The lady mage said, "Very absurd, isn't it, Tower Master? It's completely unreasonable." Ban also realized the seriousness of the situation. Eugene was White Flame Style 3-star. Could this be understood as equivalent to magic's 3 circles? What monster-like talent, although it would cause dissatisfaction among other mages. Beyond still planned to prepare Eugene a recommendation letter for A.K. Clevin. At this moment, he wondered, but who did young Master Eugene go out to see? He shouldn't know anyone in Yarrow. The lady mage said, maybe an online friend. At this time, Eugene was standing dazed in front of Sia's statue, and a tall figure was slowly approaching. With that luxuriant beard and robust muscles, it was big cousin Gargus. Was this what an 18-year-old youth should look like? Gargus said, 3 years no see, Eugene. Your muscles haven't grown at all. But don't worry, I have a solution. Muscle growth agent upgraded version, only $999 for 1 bottle. Eugene quickly interrupted his big cousin. He had absolutely no interest in these weird things. When the promotion failed, Big Cousin had a new plan. Recently, there would be an auction at Happy Street. And among this period's auction items was the legendary Giant Clan's Laid Testicles. The giant clan's what? The giant clan's testicles. That's great tonic stuff. Muscle growth agent made with it would definitely be more powerful. But Big Cousin said he didn't have enough money and hoped Eugene could support him. Eugene said, "Give up. I won't possibly lend you money to buy testicles." Upon hearing this, Big Cousin's expression changed. Then he knelt on the ground and said, "Please be sure to lend it to me." Embarrassed, Eugene had no choice but to agree to lend money to Big Cousin. Big Cousin said, "I swear by my muscles that I'll definitely pay you back with the interest." Big Cousin said he only needed one testicle. Eugene could completely take the other one to fry, boil, cook, or stew. It was said the taste was worth savoring. Not talking about testicles. Eugene was very interested in Happy Street. After Lyde was poisoned by the succubus, he developed withdrawal symptoms. He had to find a succubus once a month for magical supplementation. So this full moon night Lyde would definitely go to Happy Street. Since Led gained the succubus's favor in 3 years, he had lived through what others lived in a lifetime. His 17-year-old face was full of stories. As the eldest son of the family, his qualifications were far inferior to his younger siblings. He also had to be caught between the power struggle of 2 wives. Led had long lived under their oppression. Although he later had the opportunity to study magic in Yarrow, Lai didn't have the corresponding magical talent. Plus, being born into a legendary family, everyone had high expectations of him. Little did they know, such expectations only multiplied his pressure. Fortunately, Led finally found a way to release pressure. He got a bit of breathing space and didn't completely collapse. But the Reinhardt family and the demon race were sworn enemies. Emotionally, Eugene could understand Led's actions, but he couldn't allow Led to do this. At this moment, Rolbion suddenly summoned a magic letter. Eugene was shocked when he saw it. It turned out to be a recommendation letter from the Royal Library, A.K. Sven. A.K. Klaven not only had ancient magic passed down from the mythical age, but also had masterworks by contemporary sages, including the original manuscripts of Sinea's 3 magic works. Suddenly receiving such an honor, Eugene instinctively wanted to be modest. He really was a 1 in 10,000 magic genius. Brother Lyde studied hard for 3 years and couldn't get into a single magic tower. He had just come to Yarao for a month and was already guaranteed admission to A.K. Kleven. Indeed, people's joys and sorrows were different. Life was so good, but what exactly had Lyde done with the succubus? Eugene said he had to personally confirm it. The flower district on the full moon night was bustling with excitement. Eugene and Big Cousin also quietly arrived, of course, to avoid being recognized. Both used transformation magic. After all, main family disciples entering the red light district would definitely make headlines. Big Cousin didn't understand, but still thought it made sense. At this time, the tour guide called he would stand at a high place to observe Lyd's movements. After all, Lyd never used transformation magic, and he always wore a black robe, making him easy to identify. Upon hearing this, Eugene was furious. Visiting the red light district so brazenly, Lee's actions were simply too numerous to record, extremely evil and enviable. But Big Cousin wasn't concerned about this. He just wanted to quickly go buy the giant clan's testicles. The auction paid great attention to customer experience. All guests were arranged in different private rooms. No one knew anyone else's identity. Before long, the auction officially began. Although the host's introduction was interesting, the auction items were lizard horns or devil fruits and little orchids. Eugene had absolutely no interest in these. When would the giant clan's testicles come out? Big Cousin was very anxious. But when the host displayed the next auction item, Eugene couldn't sit still. This was an item that had failed to sell multiple times. Its only function was to emit beautiful light under moonlight. It was a very good choice for picking up girls. However, before he finished speaking, Eugene was already bidding. Fortunately, no one raised the price, allowing Eugene to successfully win it for the high price of 1 million. Eugene's heart was already in turmoil. He hadn't expected to see it in such a place. That was the turbid blade that wasn't left in history. The legendary divine sword, Moonlight Sword, that could destroy everything it pointed at. A fragment of it. Although in Big Cousin's eyes, this thing was unremarkable. The Moonlight Sword was discovered in the depths of Loyu on the Tvat continent. Symbolizing misfortune, it only recognized Bimut as its master. Who would have thought such a powerful divine sword had already become fragments? And there was no aura of power on this fragment, just like an ordinary glass shard. At this time, Eugene's phone rang. The voice said, "Young Master Eugene, young Master Light has appeared." Getting the news, Eugene hurriedly walked out. The giant clan's testicles could only be guarded by a big cousin alone. Soon, Eugene arrived at the scene, but there were actually 2 demon security guards at the entrance. This was the first time Eugene had encountered demons since his rebirth. He almost drew his sword and rushed up to beat them. Although the 2 demon security guards looked fierce and menacing, when Eugene pulled out 2 million, they still bowed their humble heads and respectfully sent Eugene in. Eugene had just entered when he was targeted by a succubus. The succubus said, "Cola, Sprite, lemon tea. What would dear young master like to drink?" Eugene said, "I'll give you 2 million. Hope you can be more reserved." The succubus said, "You're so cute, young master. Let's have some wine first." Feeling like she was about to do something inappropriate for children, Eugene said, "No need for wine." The succubus said, "Let me treat you comfortably." Eugene said, "I'll give you another 1,000,000. Please leave." The succubus said, "Are you not fully developed? How can there be someone like you who doesn't understand romance?" After getting rid of the succubus, Eugene entered the main hall alone. He immediately ordered a table full of chicken legs to reward himself. Indeed, succubi weren't as delicious as chicken legs. Before long, he saw 2 demons supporting a mysterious man walking out of a mysterious room. It was his big brother, Led, but he looked quite worn out. Seeing this situation, Eugene was almost furious to death. Laed not only had a messy relationship with Sukibi, but also let demons support him. He really disgraced the Reinhardt name. Eugene suppressed his anger and quickly got up. He wanted to find out where the demons would take Laed. Looking at Lai's mental state at this time, he shouldn't be able to handle a second round. What exactly were they planning to do? Just as he was about to follow, Eugene's path was blocked. Several people clearly came with ill intentions, menacingly approaching. They didn't waste words upon meeting, directly giving Eugene a chokehold. Unfortunately, he misjudged the situation. Eugene was a man who had been muscular since age 13. He directly gave the opponent an uppercut to the jaw. Knocking him down directly, he fell to the ground, unable to get up. The 2 accompanying lackeys weren't intimidated at all. They directly drew weapons and charged forward, but they couldn't even touch Eugene's clothes. Instead, they were directly sent flying by Eugene. Still, coming out to rob with this level of skill was simply laughable. Eugene said, "Friends, can someone now tell me in detail what this place is? How do they all pass out? But they were all down. So it seemed he could infiltrate secretly without a word?" Eugene directly kicked down the door and walked in. Why was there a smell of contraband in the air? What kind of place was this? Eugene's appearance terrified the 3 brothers nearby. The 3 brothers who were indulging looked fierce. Seeing this, Eugene said, "What a coincidence." However, the 3 brothers immediately drew their swords and charged forward. Eugene raised his hand and pointed. The magic attack directly hit them. The 3 brothers were instantly knocked to the ground. Then Eugene directly drew his storm sword. The opponent frowned, realizing things weren't simple. Did this person have a hobby of abusing raccoons? Who knew Eugene directly raised the sword above his head? In an instant, sharp sword energy swept out, directly leveling all rooms on the 1st and 2nd floors. But Lied figure wasn't found. Since he wasn't on the 1st and 2nd floors, the target was obvious. He must be on the 3rd floor. Eugene directly fired a magic spell upstairs, then leaped into the air. He discovered a mysterious room in the corner. "Big brother, I'm coming to find you now." However, at this moment, the door actually glowed with waves of blood-red magic. In a flash, a pillar of blood-colored magic surged forth. At the critical moment, Eugene quickly threw out the moonlight sword fragment. The powerful magical light wave couldn't advance an inch. It was all blocked by the fragment. Although it was just a fragment, the moonlight sword's magic immunity characteristic was indeed still there. Eugene said, "Old man, you just used black magic, right?" You didn't even give a warning. You wanted to kill me, right? Then it seems you're prepared for battle." Eugene's erupting white flames were like a lion's mane. The guarding old man was almost scared to his knees. Fortunately, the demon brothers appeared, restoring the old man's confidence. Seeing the situation, Eugene laughed angrily on the spot. He said, "Just these two pieces of trash. Think they can block my way." The demon brothers ignored Eugene's words and directly showed their claws. Eugene also stopped talking. In an instant, Eugene had already deployed his sword stance, but the demon brothers were completely unaware, directly rushing forward. Eugene swung his sword, summoning a tornado, solving one of them in a few moves. Witnessing his big brother's tragic death, the other demon was furious. In his anger, he actually delivered the peak strike of his life. However, it wasn't Eugene who was hit, but himself. He couldn't believe he had been defeated so easily. But Eugene didn't give him a chance to catch his breath. He directly reached out and grabbed its face. It couldn't move at all. It sat down directly on the ground. The fierce white flame energy destroyed Eugene's disguise. The old man on the side couldn't believe his eyes. That signature white hair. Could it be Eugene Reinhardt? Eugene said, "Then get lost." When push came to shove, the old man still wanted to make excuses. But with his elementary school education, he couldn't make up stories. He steeled his heart and directly launched an attack at such close distance. "Let's see how you dodge." However, Eugene wasn't afraid at all. Just one jing distance, Eugene instantly arrived in front of the old man and swung a sword. This sword was only 0.01 centimeters from his throat, but he didn't dare make excuses, only wanted to kneel. Before figuring out the truth, Eugene decided to spare his life for now. In the room, Led was lying quietly on the bed. In the basin under the bed were strange items emitting an eerie glow. The old man said, "That's a unicorn's heart, a sacrifice offered to make a contract with the succubus. And the demon who is about to make a contract with young master, Lied, is a subordinate of the legendary succubus Queen Bella." Eugene angrily said, "So this is the reason Lied indulged in contraband and privately mixed with succubi." Hearing Eugene's angry questioning, the old man knelt on the ground and said, "These were all young master Lied wishes. I didn't dare refuse the young master's orders," Eugene accused. "Of course you wouldn't refuse taking Lid's gold coins by the handful while arranging for him to make contracts with your master. You really struck it rich. If you don't want to die, kneel there properly." Eugene looked at Led's indulgent appearance on the bed. There was even unknown liquid remaining at the corner of his mouth. Instantly, his anger soared through the roof. He went directly up to him. Led, still in his dream, was instantly startled and awake. He couldn't figure out what was happening now. Eugene said coldly, "Are you awake now?" "My good big brother lied." Led's feelings at this moment were indescribable. He didn't understand why Eugene was here. Eugene said, "I really tried hard to understand your situation, but as the legitimate eldest son of the Reinhardt family, you actually made a contract with demons, and it was a male succubus. Do you know the consequences of making a contract with demons? After making a contract with demons, your soul will forever belong to the demon race. You will become a slave manipulated by the demon race." Upon hearing this, Lied continued to make excuses, saying his demon friends were all very friendly and kind-hearted. They promised they wouldn't force him, and he really loved it there, and he felt Eugene didn't understand anything at all. Eugene possessed incomparable cultivation talent. He simply couldn't understand Lied's situation and had no right to criticize Lied. Eugene said, "Innate talent cannot be overcome. But having talent alone doesn't mean you can rest easy. You still need to put in far more effort than ordinary people." Stein and Stair, who stayed at the main house, are also training desperately. And even if you learned black magic, you still couldn't become the family head. Upon hearing this, Led instantly went mad. He had never thought about becoming the family head. He just wanted to go to that free place and gain recognition from his demon friends. Eugene said helplessly, "As a descendant of the great Baimut, yet wanting to go to the demon realm, Hamid, If you weren't the legitimate eldest son of the main house, do you think they would play with you here? How can you be so stupid? You were born standing at the finish line that others could never reach in their lifetime. Yet you still have the nerve to be decadent here. Eugene couldn't stand it anymore. He directly punched him, flying. Eugene had no interest in listening anymore. He then took out his phone to notify Roliban. Moments later, the old man was taken away by guards. In 3 years' time, a sunny youth had actually become like this. Roliban's heart was also filled with indescribable disappointment. That night, the family head and the first lady rushed to Yarao. This scene left them only with silence. But just then, a mysterious visitor suddenly arrived. It was actually the legendary Black Magic Master, who had personally made a contract with the reclusive Demon King. Also, the current Black Tower Master, Borzak Robes. What was he planning to do? It turned out he had come to accept blame. Although this had nothing to do with their Black Magic Tower, the main culprit involved was a Black Magic Master. There was no choice. He could only choose to take responsibility for this matter. The young maiden was imprisoned. All accomplices were arrested on the spot. This was very harsh to Giard's ears, as if under pressure from the Reinhardt family's prestige. He had lowered his head and admitted wrongs he shouldn't have admitted. Of course, the First Lady didn't think so. She firmly believed it was the Black Magic Master who had bewitched her son. For this, the Black Tower Master also brought a message from the Demon King. The reclusive Demon King expressed that bringing unhappiness to the dear Baymut family made him feel very sad, so he would personally cut off the head of the involved male succubus. Upon hearing this, Eugene was furious. The reclusive Demon King actually called Baymut dear. Sooner or later, he would chop his down. Seeing the atmosphere becoming awkward, the Black Tower Master chose silence. Face had been given, and it wasn't suitable to stay here longer. Before leaving, he didn't forget to give Eugene a mysterious smile. Then Eugene also got up to leave. After all, he wasn't in a good position to participate in dealing with Big Brother lied. Family head Geared expressed his apologies to Rolly Beyond. He would take Lied back to the main house. The First Lady on the side was shocked. She felt her son hadn't even begun learning black magic and would reform. He might even become more diligent in the future. There was no need to take him back to the main house. But Gear's face was gloomy. Lid's actions had damaged the family's reputation. He had to return to the main house to receive education. The First Lady said, "Where is there still a place for Lied in the main house? Now the main house has been taken over by Stein and Stare. Lied must stay in Yarrow no matter what." The First Lady angrily scolded Gid for never caring about Lied. All he did was hover around Anna and those two damn children. Sometimes I really feel sorry for family head Guire. The First Lady was a sickly yander. The Second Lady was sinister and vicious. Indeed, pure love was the way to go. The First Lady said, "If you really care about Lied, you should let Lied become Rolly Beyond's disciple. If you're worried about him going astray, you should send someone to supervise him constantly." The First Lady disagreed with taking Lied back to the main house. She would rather take Lee back to her parents' home. Giard said helplessly, "If you wish it so, then let's do it this way." On the other side, Eugene, who was just about to go back and rest, discovered someone had been waiting for a long time in the shadows. It was Black Tower Master Borzak. The indoor atmosphere had been too serious just now. There was no chance to chat. He said the reason he was willing to take responsibility was largely because of Eugene. He knew Eugene hated black magic, but asked Eugene not to hate him. Faced with the Black Tower Master's outstretched hand, Eugene chose to ignore it. Eugene hated all black magic masters. The Black Tower Master, feeling awkward, quickly changed the subject. He would, like Rolibon, recommend Eugene to A.K. Clevin. This way, Eugene's chances of going to A.K. Clevin would greatly increase. It looked really sincere. Eugene said he'd take the gift, but wouldn't do the work. It was already dark. He needed to hurry home for dinner. The helpless Black Tower Master then turned to leave. At this time, Eugene said, "Did you really not participate in Lid's matter?" Borzak said, "I'm proud to be a black magic master, so, even if it's the main house's legitimate eldest son, if he has no talent, then he's not worthy of becoming a black magic master. I hope you can understand my meaning." Eugene thought back to Lied and was also very helpless. He was just a pitiful guy who longed for recognition. Back in his room, Eugene looked at the unicorn heart before him. This heart was in very good condition, perfect for frying, boiling, cooking, or stewing. But extracting magic power directly from the heart was the cleanest and most convenient method of use, feeling the pure magic power emanating from the heart. Eugene might be able to reach 4 stars before age 20. That would refresh the fastest record in family history. Jiwon and Guyard were white flame-style 6 stars, already among the strongest on the continent. But they weren't Eugene's targets. Beemut had created the white flame style. Eugene wanted to incorporate everything of Helmo into it on that foundation. Then he'd crush all those demon kings into slag. On the other side, Big Cousin successfully bid on the giant clan's testicles. Final price 300 million. Eugene pay up. Upon hearing this, Eugene was shocked. You want to spend 300 million to buy 2 testicles and with my money? Big Cousin said, hurry up, Eugene. When it's done, I'll scrub your back. Big Cousin was relentless. Eugene had no choice but to pay. Then Big Cousin invited Eugene to his residence. After all, the chance to see testicles with your own eyes was very rare. Upon hearing this, Eugene felt a chill. Did he look like someone interested in that thing? But Eugene still decided to go back with Big Cousin. He was very interested in Big Cousin's red flame style, wanting to see what was different from White Rock Flame. Maybe he could even combine the two. Eugene, who was thinking, seemed to notice something. He immediately rushed out, desperately chasing. It couldn't be wrong. He absolutely couldn't be mistaken. That unnatural light purple hair color, that color that could only be produced by integrating massive magical power. Pushing through the crowd, Eugene finally saw clearly that the figure from just now was right ahead. Essay, is it really you? After 300 years apart, he had finally seen the person he'd been thinking about. At this moment, though he had 1,000 words, he couldn't make a sound. C was still as graceful as before. But Eugene was already different. He didn't know if Senna could recognize him. If he told her he had been reborn as Bemu's grandson, she would definitely scold him. After all, even after 500 more years, her personality would definitely still be that volatile. Eugene couldn't help but want to step forward and hold Senna's hand. How could this be? Could it be a spirit? Could something have happened to Sia? No. This was an illusion created with magic. Eugene helplessly lowered his arms. His heart was dead as ash. At this moment, Sia's phantom slowly turned around. Eugene's heart was filled with excitement. How could he tell her that he was Helmo? Would she recognize him? This appearance would surely awaken her memories. Sena, who had turned around, seemed to confirm something, and a slight smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. She opened her mouth as if she was speaking. After speaking, she smiled gently, then began to dissipate in the air. Were you saying, have you found it? The future we both long for still lies ahead. I hope to walk alongside you towards such a future. Do you know, S.A.? I'm very happy now because I found you, too. Before we truly meet again, I will definitely become more reliable. Eugene looked at the bustling street and fell into deep thought. Without a doubt, Senya was still alive, which was why she could come looking for Eugene. Perhaps like Tanfist, she recognized Eugene's soul. Perhaps she found Eugene's location through the necklace. Either way, Senna definitely knew about Eugene's rebirth. But since she couldn't come in person, it must be because of a seal. Perhaps Sia sealed herself. Or perhaps she was sealed by the demon king of confinement. Sia must be unable to act freely now. This time you came to find me, so next time I'll come to find you. Please wait for me. Suddenly a voice rang out, looking up at the sky at a 45-degree re-angle. Eugene, are you afraid your tears will fall? What are you secretly plotting all by yourself? Eugene said, stop talking nonsense. Hurry home and show me your red flame style. The big cousin found Eugene's hobby very strange. He had already mastered the white flame style, yet he was still interested in the red flame style. Seeing this, Eugene said, you seem to be working on something new. Can't you generate power without exploding your clothes? His big cousin said, That's not it. Don't you know about exploding clothes plus critical hits? Open your eyes wide and watch carefully. Although the big cousin was particularly troublesome, it had to be said that the power of the red flame style was also extraordinary. The mainstream red flame style of the main family couldn't achieve nuclear fission, but through the continuous efforts of the branch ancestors, it had now successfully split the red flame style to 5 stars, making it one of the best among the family branches. The big cousin still wanted to show off his 2-star strength, but Eugene chose to ignore him directly. It seemed that splitting the red flame style to 5 stars was already the limit. Bamut created the white flame style as the main family's secret transmission, then taught the red flame style to the branches and vassals. This created a gap between the main family and the branches. Eugene couldn't understand, no matter how he thought about it, based on his understanding of Bamut. He shouldn't be such a petty person. Now it seemed there was no need to combine the white flame style and red flame style. Then Eugene turned and left, saying the giant's testicles can be left for big cousin to admire alone. Returning to the red magic tower, Eugene came to the training room. The book in AK-7 must contain clues about Sia. Now that he had obtained recommendation letters from 2 tower masters, getting an entry permit shouldn't be a problem. My dear Senna, I've already waited 300 years. Waiting a little longer shouldn't matter. The Moonlight Sword possessed anti-agic properties, but even a single fragment could only work against low-level magic. Therefore, if his magic power wasn't broken by the fragment, that would mean his magic power condensation had exceeded the level of the white flame style. Wait for me, Senna. I will definitely become stronger. That day, the Lady Mage was cosplaying as Senna. Suddenly, she was told that room 166 was continuously emitting vibrations and explosion sounds, thinking that Eugene might be playing some thrilling game. She couldn't wait to join in, but was suddenly startled by an explosion sound from inside. The Lady Mage hurried in and said, Master Eugene, are you all right? Is this something someone my age should be seeing? Eugene said, I'm just practicing magic power and magic. Don't make such a fuss. The Moonlight Sword fragment was floating quietly in the air. Then Eugene gathered his magic power throughout his body, creating several deep craters on the ground. Could this be damage caused by a low-level mage? The Lady Mage was directly stunned. Eugene had already achieved the fusion of white flame style and magic, and the power after fusion far exceeded magic of the same level. Combined with the assistance of the Moonlight Sword, the magic power released now was even more concentrated. The Lady Mage said, You must be tired from practicing, Master Eugene. Would you like to rest? Unfortunately, Eugene refused. He prepared to go see Roly Bion first, but Roland wasn't at the Magic Tower at all. Instead, he was at the Royal Library, aka Sven. Yarrow's capital, Avalon, was located at the center of the 5 magic towers, surrounded by lake water. It could only be reached by boat, and no other magic could cross the lake water because Issei had sealed the entire Avalon with magic. And even hundreds of years later today, the seal remained intact. Eugene couldn't help but marvel at how amazing Senna was. With his current magical knowledge, he couldn't understand at all how Senna had sealed the entire royal city. The Lady Mage leading the way noticed that Eugene was absent-minded, so she gave Eugene some popular science about what they saw in Avalon. Even tower masters couldn't use magic in Avalon. Only the court's mage corps could cast spells freely. The magic towers in Yarrow had a mutually supportive relationship. Although loyal to the royal family, they had the right to refuse unreasonable commands. The relationship between the magic towers and the council was actually deeper. So, the magic tower mages became the council's highest combat power. Currently, 3 people opposed Eugene's recommendation letter. They were the Blue Tower Master, the Green Tower Master, and the Mage Guild President. Eugene needed to gain their recognition to enter and exit AK Clevin. Then, the Lady Mage bowed to Eugene in farewell. Go for it, Master Eugene. You're the best. Eugene definitely wouldn't give up easily. He still needed to find clues about Senna from AK Clevin. At the council venue, Yarrow's most powerful mages had been waiting for a long time. They were the Court Mage Corps Commander, Red Tower Master, Green Tower Master, Blue Tower Master, White Tower Master, Black Tower Master, and the Mage Guild President, whose hairstyle made people want to punch him. At this time, the person sitting in the highest position asked Eugene to raise his head. He was Yarao's crown prince. This crown prince was no simple person, not only the first heir to the throne, but also a strong person who reached the 5th ring before adulthood. He said, "I've heard of you, Eugene Reinhardt. I heard you're talented, but casting magic is different from wielding swords and spears." He thought Eugene was just a 17-year-old brat who definitely used the Reinhardt family's influence to make shady deals with the Red Magic Tower and Black Magic Tower. Eugene didn't care about his attitude, but politely asked what he needed to do. The Red Tower Master said, "You just need to release magic. The mages will carefully observe your magic." The Blue Tower Master then said, "Originally, we would also need to study your magic themes and papers, but I suppose you don't have such things." The Blue Tower Master's sarcasm didn't shake Eugene, because Eugene would prove himself with his own strength. Can you look down on others just by sitting up high? Can you talk nonsense just because you're old? Eugene didn't care who you were. Everything was decided by strength. But at this moment, the Tower Masters on the high platform were uninterested. They had seen too many geniuses. Just the fusion of core and ring wasn't enough to make them look at him differently. As Eugene slowly raised his right hand, a magic whirlwind easily condensed in his palm. Then it transformed into magic bullets that scattered like flowing clouds. In an instant, they gathered together again, fusing into a fireball. Finally, it became a magic blade flashing with cold light. He could actually change magic so skillfully and achieve chantless casting. The Blue Tower Master said, "Eugene, can you use magic and sword aura simultaneously? Can you do it?" Eugene smiled confidently, slowly drew the storm sword. His handsome appearance made the old lady's body tremble. Instantly, the storm sword was wrapped in Eugene's exclusive white flame aura, and his left hand still maintained the magic blade. He actually used kororis to replace rings and could accurately use cores. At this moment, the mages couldn't help but admire Eugene's excellence. But regarding his entry to Aklavin, they still needed to discuss it. Therefore, Roly Bion asked Eugene to wait outside first. Eugene naturally had no objections. He turned and left gracefully. After Eugene left, the Blue Tower Master said, "Red Tower Master, did you really never guide him?" Although Roly Beyond had said it many times, the Blue Tower Master still didn't believe Eugene was self-taught, especially in just 4 months. The Crown Prince said he's a member of the Reinhardt family, a descendant of the great Bimut. Don't all the people on the Tavak continent know how excellent their bloodline is? The White Tower Master also affirmed Eugene's talent. She could see that Eugene's first ring magic had power far exceeding the first ring, though she might be more interested in Eugene's handsome face. The guild president had something to say about this matter. He acknowledged Eugene's talent, but he also felt Eugene was too young. It was too early for him to enter AK Cleveland now. He still needed to go home and study hard. On the contrary, the Court Mage Corps commander was very optimistic about Eugene. He believed Eugene had unlimited potential. After all, Eugene was an adopted son of the Reinhardts and couldn't possibly inherit the family in the future. The original first heir lied, had a scandal, and now the first successor was Stein Reinhardt. So Eugene would have to leave the main family after getting married. This was the Reinhardt family rule. The Court Mage Corps commander said, "I happen to have an unmarried granddaughter. What a coincidence." The Black Tower Master said, "Commander, you're really humorous. Are you here to be funny? I'm afraid you wouldn't even make the list." Eugene possesses qualifications recognized even by the Reinhardt main family. If he also gets Yarao's support, his future achievements might be comparable to the Great Behemoth. The Green Tower Master said, "Black Tower Master, you're praising Eugene so much. Is this your own opinion or the opinion of the reclusive Demon King who signed a contract with you? Don't meddle too much. Don't reach your hands too far, or it would be bad if they got chopped off." Hearing this, the Black Tower Master adjusted his glasses and showed a strange expression, saying, My hands are right here. Want to chop them today? Hey, I just want to either kill all of you or be killed by all of you. The Blue Tower Master said, A fight? Count me in. Seeing the atmosphere gradually becoming murderous, the White Tower Master stood up and said, If we have different opinions, then let's vote. The Crown Prince quickly came out to mediate, saying the voting could start with him. He agreed to grant Eugene the AKC one-entry permit. At the same time, Eugene, who was waiting outside, discovered that information about Sena was carved on the wall. Suddenly, Eugene felt a chill behind him. It turned out the White Tower Master had appeared behind him. Eugene said, Move away from me. Don't get so close. This puts me at a disadvantage. The White Tower Master said, Do you know what you're saying, Eugene? I'm the famous beauty of the Magic Tower, the ceiling of beauty among female Tower Masters. Eugene said, Aren't you the only female Tower Master? The instantly embarrassed White Tower Master quickly changed the subject. Regarding Eugene's entry to AK Cleven, 5 people voted in favor, 2 opposed, and 1 remained neutral. Eugene said, Then it's settled. Can I go upstairs now? The White Tower Master said, Aren't you curious about everyone's positions? Let me tell you the truth. The one who remained neutral was me. The White Tower Master remained neutral because she didn't want to get involved in annoying verbal disputes. And that Blue Tower Master, who talked a lot earlier, she thought he would oppose, but he actually voted in favor in the end. Isn't that surprising, Eugene? Guess which 2 people opposed? They were the Green Tower Master and the Mage Guild President. Seeing Eugene had no reaction, she said, Are you really 17? Such a cold reaction. Eugene said, If there's nothing else, I'll go first. You rest well. The White Tower Master came to chat up Eugene because she was interested in Eugene's storm sword. White Tower Master Moose was the strongest spirit summoner of the current generation. Both the Lightning Spirit King and Earth Spirit King had signed contracts with her. Her dream was to collect all the Spirit Kings, but the Wind Spirit King had always refused to see her, so she wanted to obtain Eugene's storm sword. Previously, the White Tower Master had even sent letters to the Reinhardt main family, but family Headguard refused to lend the sword no matter what. Eugene said, Sorry, wife and sword are not for lending. The White Tower Master said, Then what if your wife asked to borrow the sword? Eugene said, Still no lending. The storm sword is just temporarily lent to me by the main family. The Wind Spirit King was now extremely aloof and proud. Eugene had summoned for 4 years, but it never appeared again. Therefore, lending it to the White Tower Master wouldn't matter. But the deal couldn't be completed so easily. Maybe he could even get some unexpected surprises. The storm sword was a must-have for the White Tower Master, but she wasn't in a hurry. Eugene came to the front desk and received the AK Cleven entry permit. The Royal Library, Alaska Cleven, had 15 floors in total. Floors 12 to 14 contained Senya's magic books, and each floor of AK Cleven had exclusive familiars. They were all left by legendary great mages in history, including Yarao's founding king and the wise Sena. Information about Sena might also be hidden in her familiar. The White Tower Master knew Eugene was very interested in Sena. After all, Eugene had visited Sena's mansion as soon as he arrived in Yarao. If Eugene agreed to lend her the storm sword, she would tell Eugene her exclusive information. But Eugene didn't pay attention to the White Tower Master. He planned to go to the library first to investigate carefully. The White Tower Master said, Are you planning to go to the 12th floor? I knew you like Sena. If it's you, I can accompany you. Eugene said, No need, you can play downstairs by yourself. Hearing this, the White Tower Master was somewhat gloating. The first time seeing the truth of magic would be very shocking. She advised Eugene to prepare himself mentally quickly. It would be best to put on diapers now. The White Tower Master said, Don't get so scared you wet yourself, Master Eugene. Eugene really didn't want to listen to her talk, so he frantically pressed the elevator button. What a nasty old lady. As the elevator door slowly opened, Eugene froze in place. This unique hair color, this appearance, he would recognize it even if it turned to ash. Welcome to S.A.'s Hall, Master Eugene. He absolutely couldn't be mistaken. This was exactly how Sena looked in his memory, but it was the youthful version. They had only been apart for 300 years. The goddess had left behind a child. What man could accept such a thing? And her head didn't seem very bright either. How could Sa have a child? The child said, "What are you thinking about, Master Eugene? I'm the familiar managing Senior's Hall." So this was Senya's familiar. No wonder the old lady had that expression earlier. "How do you know my name? Didn't you just register your name on the first floor?" It turned out that all the familiars in AKC Leven were connected to the magic system. The little girl's name was Mel. Eugene wasn't surprised by this name because Sia's surname was Mailden, but he didn't expect Senna would create a familiar that looked exactly like her. Eugene asked, "Are all the familiars here in human form?" The familiar said, "No, only I am special here." Rory Bell had said that magic that could create life was all forbidden, but Eugene didn't believe Sienna would touch the forbidden. The familiar said, "I'm not truly alive. Lady C created my body with magic, and my spirit is sealed there." Following the familiar's pointing direction, the scene before his eyes made Eugene's face full of amazement. He didn't understand what that thing actually was. The familiar said, "This is Lady Saya's lifelong magical essence magic." Eugene said, "Shouldn't magic be a grimoire? That's not a book at all." The familiar said, "It is a book. Your thinking needs to keep up with the times." Eugene was speechless, worthy of being a familiar created by Sina. This proud and arrogant little expression brimming with pride was exactly the same. Eugene said, "Did Sina have this personality before she went into seclusion too?" The familiar said, "Of course not. Lady Sina was noble and elegant, just didn't like to smile much." Eugene couldn't imagine that the little girl, who used to wear all her emotions on her face, could eventually become noble and elegant and write magic that transcended the era and create a familiar with the same personality as her childhood self. He couldn't help but walk forward. He wanted to find evidence that Senna was still alive from it. Eugene said, "Your Senya is familiar. You knew she would go into seclusion, right?" However, Eugene didn't get the answer he wanted. Mel didn't know Sia's whereabouts at all. The mages of Yarao didn't believe Mel didn't know either. They would come to search through Mel's memories every few years. Eugene understood that they searched through Mel's memories not only to find traces of Senna, if not because of Senna's magical status. They would even try every means to dismantle Mel, if not for other reasons. From Mel's introduction, he learned a cliff and only made public the upper part of magic. Senna had extracted the middle and lower parts before disappearing. Mel could tell Eugene was very interested in Senna. Plus, Eugene was a descendant of the Reinhardt family, which made her very curious because, as far as she knew, Senna had never contacted the Reinhardt family since settling in Yarrow. Eugene was also strange. According to the Reinhardt family records, Bimud had no contact with his former companions after returning from Heimud. Their last meeting was still at Bimud's funeral. Eugene asked, "Did Senna ever mention her former companions?" The familiar said, "Lady Signia said Morin was an idiot. Said, Enos was a snake-like woman." Eugene asked, "Did she ever mention Helmo?" The familiar said, "Of course she did. She said he was just a fool, bastard, annoying person, a useless idiot, even when given opportunities. Every time Lady Sia talked about Helmo, she looked very painful." Eugene said, "Then how did she talk about Baimut?" From Mel's words, Eugene learned that Senna never talked about Baimut, never praised him, never cursed him, never even commented on him. What exactly happened to Senna back then? Also, Eugene learned from Mel's words that Senna never truly smiled happily. The reason she had the painter add a smile for her was just because someone once liked to see her smile. Hearing this, Eugene instantly felt sad. Why didn't he survive that mere fatal wound back then? Now his good brother and girl were both hanging on the wall. How could he handle this alone? He couldn't help but want to pat Mel's head. After all, she looked too much like Sina, but Mel brushed his hand away. After all, some people might look like children on the surface, but were actually over 200 years old. Head patting was very rude to her. Sia's hall didn't just contain magic. There were also many magical tools that Santa had collected. For example, Sia's favorite staff, Akasha. Eugene, of course, recognized this staff. He was just surprised why Senna didn't take it with her. Akasha was made from the roots of the world tree. It was the world's strongest magic staff. One of a kind. After all, the proud elves would never agree to cut the world tree's roots again. Of course, there was a story behind this. Sea had once been abandoned in the elven forest. At first, the elves didn't pay much attention, just planned to casually raise her in sea. But when Sia displayed extraordinary magical talent, it was different. Therefore, she also obtained world tree roots to make a staff, and even placed a red dragon's heart as the magic core. There were only 2 staffs in the world using dragon hearts as cores. The other was named Blood Red Mary. Its owner was a lich called Bell, the one who killed Helmo 300 years ago. Now it should be in the hands of a black mage who signed a contract with the reclusive demon king. Eugene said, "Can I pick it up and take a look?" Mel thought Eugene was being delusional. Akasha wasn't something just anyone could pick up and look at. It only recognized Sia as its sole master. Eugene didn't believe it. He used all his magic power, but got no response. What magic did that Sia use? At this time, the familiar said, "You seem to really like Lady Sinea." Eugene said, "No, I'm just slightly interested." The familiar said, "Are young people nowadays also dishonest?" Eugene said, "I just simply like stories from the past." The familiar said, "Then you should also like that book." Then she turned around, ran to the bookshelf, and took out a book, saying, "It's this book, The Great Adventure of Hero Baymut." This was a fairy tale book that recorded the great Baymut and his companions, creating history together. Mentioning this book made Eugene very angry because it depicted Helmo as a stupid idiot. But Mel said, "You misunderstood. What you saw should be the revised version, which is different from the original version." In the original version, Helmo was much stupider. He was a crude fighter with incomplete brain development and completely undeveloped cerebellum, who relied mainly on brute force. Later, to maintain the hero's image, it was slightly beautified. And here there are even more interesting things. Signia extracted her own memories and personally left them. That is the truest appearance of the companions who once adventured together. Seeing the phantoms of his former companions, Eugene immediately started praising them. Mel thought he was talking about B-Moot. Eugene said, "Never mind Bimut. Helmo was the team's visual appeal. Doesn't he have the charm of being tamed by a beast?" The familiar said, "How did you manage to say something so disgusting?" Then the two began to examine the magical materials. Sia's collection was on floors 12 to 14. The 13th floor mainly collected essays, handwritten notes, and research. But Eugene couldn't understand them. The 14th floor mainly collected research results and grimoires. Of course, Eugene still couldn't understand them. Mel suggested Eugene should experience the book magic. This was Senna's most famous masterpiece. Not only did it record the most suitable way to use rings, it could also enhance magical power, achieving multiple magical constructions from molecular structures, inputting and preserving magic in unconscious states, including the ideal driving method for rings. That was the essence of the book magic. Eugene listened in confusion, having no idea what she was talking about. The familiar said, "Fools can't understand it. If everyone could understand, it couldn't possibly be the greatest grimoire in history." Eugene said, "You say it's a book, then tell me how to read this book." The familiar raised her hand and said, "Very simple." Eugene copied her gesture and raised his hand. Although he could continuously input magic power, it seemed like nothing was happening. But in the next second, Eugene felt as if he was in the middle of a lake. In an instant, he began to fall rapidly. He couldn't distinguish between east, south, west, and north at all. This feeling was like a dream, but also not like a dream. Although conscious, he couldn't move his body. He just felt extremely powerless. This was an ocean of magic power. This was a scene Eugene had never seen before. Just moments ago, at the bottom of the sea, in a flash, he was floating in midair. As the tide receded, it revealed an enormous ring which instantly split into even more rings, dense and endless, infinite. Then Eugene began to fall rapidly. When he regained consciousness, he found himself already lying on the ground. Although he couldn't understand it, he felt greatly shocked. What exactly had SA created? Mel beside him was now grinning mischievously. She thought Eugene performed quite well, just foaming at the mouth and fainting for 2.5 hours. The Blue Tower Master and White Tower Master had been directly scared to the point of wetting themselves back then. Eugene couldn't help but recall the White Tower Master's warning. It seemed that was the voice of experience. The familiar said, "What are your thoughts after experiencing magic?" Eugene said, "It's not a matter of thoughts. It's something very magical." Obviously, Eugene was just a fool. Sena had once reached the ultimate 9th ring of magic, but she didn't give up practicing through continuous exploration and research. She broke through her own limits and defined this new realm as the Eternal Void. Since then, the Eternal Void became the ultimate goal for mages, but no one had ever succeeded. The Eternal Void could split rings and form cycles. It was the ideal, perfect driving method. Spell cooldown was hauled and power was doubled. A Senna at this level could completely fight the Demon King alone. This made Eugene fall into deep thought. Not just Xia, including Anis, Morin, and Bamu, should all have become stronger. But why didn't they challenge the Demon King again? Something must have happened that he didn't know about. It must be. And just as Eugene got out of the elevator, he was stopped by the White Tower Master. This time, she was determined to get Eugene's storm sword. She even wanted to make some trades with Eugene. Seeing the situation, Eugene smiled crookedly. If you want to talk about this, he wasn't sleepy anymore, but he really wasn't interested in magic staff or anything like that. Rory Bell on the side said that thing was only fit for propping up table legs. The White Tower Master said angrily, "What are you doing causing trouble on the side?" Rory Bell said, "You already have 2 Spirit Kings. Why are you still so greedy?" The White Tower Master said angrily, "What's wrong with a woman wanting more men?" Actually, Rory Ann was afraid the White Tower Master would change sides after gaining power. After all, Yarrow's political situation was now turbulent. But this woman clearly had no brains and shouldn't be a concern. If not for needing help, the White Tower Master would probably beat him up right now. At this time, Eugene said, "I thought about it. I don't want the magic staff." The White Tower Master said, "You talk as if I was going to give it to you. At most, I would just lend it to you." Eugene said, "Then forget it. Let's not make a deal." These 2 guys were really annoying. The White Tower Master said, "How about this? Lend me the storm sword for 1 week. I'll lend you the magic staff for 7 years. For the White Tower Master, the Wind Spirit King was a must-have. That was her lifelong pursuit, her eternal dream. At this time, Roly Beyond also mentioned that the White Tower Master had a very precious item. The White Tower Master quickly covered his mouth and said, "Can you shut up?" Eugene said with interest. "What is it?" "I'm a bit curious, Roly," Bayon said. "It's the Dark Cloak," the White Tower Master said angrily. "I told you to shut up." Roly Beyond said, "As far as I know, you haven't used the Dark Cloak in nearly 10 years. Rather than letting it mold at home, wouldn't it be good to take it out for exchange?" Eugene said, "I don't want to exchange. I'm just curious what the Dark Cloak is." The White Tower Master said, "It's just an ordinary leopard print autumn coat. That's all." Roly Balin said, "The Dark Cloak is a Heil spatial magic tool. It can directly transfer frontal magic attacks." The White Tower Master said, "It doesn't have such functions at all." Roly Beyond continued, "The cloak surface also has Heil protective magic. All attacks below the 5th ring are easily handled. The cloak also has an independent space inside, allowing random storage and switching of multiple weapons. It's so convenient." Eugene said, "Well, I'll take a bit of a loss and trade for this Dark Cloak instead, but I need to ask the main family first." The White Tower Master said, "You're thinking quite beautifully." Eugene continued, "I seem to have overused my brain a bit in A.K. Claven earlier, so I should find a place to rest first." Roly Beyond said, "What a coincidence. There's a newly opened bathhouse right ahead. How about we go to the 3rd floor to relax? I'll call to reserve spots right now." The scene immediately became awkward. The 2 directly ignored the White Tower Master. The The thoroughly outmaneuvered White Tower Master had nothing to say, and could only be forced to agree to lend the dark cloak to Eugene. Eugene said, "I know you're anxious, but don't be anxious yet. I still need to ask the main family first." At this point, the White Tower Master was nearly going mad. She really couldn't take it anymore. After learning about the situation, family head Geyer didn't object to lending out the storm sword, but someone from the Reinhardt family needed to oversee it. "So, this is the dark cloak. Pretty cool, right? I'd probably look cooler wearing it than you do." Eugene could always easily infuriate the White Tower Master. She now got a headache just seeing Eugene. Not wanting to talk anymore, the White Tower Master hurriedly changed the topic. She was quite curious about who would come to oversee. From what Eugene knew, Jin would come along with the black envoys of the Reinhardt family, who were called the Hounds. They were the guardians of the family rules. A year ago, Juin officially became one of them. The white envoys of the Reinhardt family only served the main family, but the black envoys served the name Reinhardt itself. Those who could join were all renowned powerhouses in the family's history. The council of elders behind them was on equal footing with the Giard. Although the legend sounded mythical and somewhat absurd, Eugene had lived in the main family for 4 years and had never seen them once. This made Eugene very curious how powerful the legendary black envoys really were. At this moment, Eugene approached the White Tower Master, wanting to take off her dark cloak. The White Tower Master immediately pulled her clothes tight and said, "You actually want to strip my clothes off?" Eugene said, "Since you know, be more careful. If it gets snot on it, how can I wear it later?" The White Tower Master said, "Are you worthy?" Roy Bion said, "You two stop arguing. They're here." As the car door slowly opened, a figure quietly appeared. Why would she appear here? The person who came was none other than Ster. "Ster, what are you doing in Yarrow?" "Mother's birthday is coming up, so I came to shop for Stein. And I'm also curious about how you're doing." Eugene responded indifferently that he was doing well. While Ster clearly had many things to say, she couldn't say a single word at this moment when he learned to understand love. At this time, June's figure also slowly appeared. He was still as spirited as ever. Following closely behind him was a burly old man, and you could tell at a glance that he was an extremely formidable character, his thick beard paired with his muscular physique. This guy must be connected to the big cousin somehow. Then another person walked out of the carriage. This was a very pure magician, probably here for the contract of the transaction. After them came a woman with an extremely powerful aura. It wasn't hard to see. She was very confident in her strength. She walked with great authority and seemed to be very skilled in martial arts. She must be the person with the highest status here. She spoke, "It's been about 30 years since we last met, Roliban. You've actually become the Red Tower Master." Roliban replied modestly, "These are all just empty titles." Then she turned to ask Eugene, "You must be Eugene Reinhardt, right?" Although he didn't know her identity. Eugene knew that bowing at this moment was the right thing to do. "I am Carmen Reinhardt. By seniority, I should be your great aunt, but don't call me that." Eugene's gaze instantly became dazed. This woman looked so young, yet was actually family headguard's aunt. How could such a big shot appear because of his matter? Why was she really here? Roly Bayon displayed excellent hospitality, leading everyone to the conference room for negotiations. Carmen was the previous family head's sister. Because she couldn't get married, she stayed in the main family. She was now the captain of the Black Envoy Knights' 3rd Squad. The bearded old man was from a branch family and was now the 3rd Squad's vice captain. Magicians were very rare for the family and also from a branch family. He would preside over the transaction with the White Tower Master. As magic power flickered at his fingertips, a contract document formed by magic power appeared before the White Tower Master. The White Tower Master said, "What happens if the storm sword gets damaged? Why isn't this written clearly?" Carmen on the side responded, "If the sword is destroyed, you pay with your life." She believed the storm sword was priceless, and borrowing it required betting one's life. The White Tower Master said, "My life is also priceless, so there's nothing to discuss." Carmen slowly put a cigarette in her mouth and said, If there's nothing to discuss, then there's nothing to discuss. I don't care. Whether to lend it or not is up to you. Seeing the negotiation about to fail, the magician quickly stepped in. He said this was just a contract formality, and the White Tower Master needn't mind. If it really happened, they could discuss it then. The White Tower Master could see the main family was trying to extort her. They had identified her needs and were taking advantage of their creditor status to be presumptuous. At this moment, Carmen slowly pulled out a huge pocket watch, grumbling for them to hurry up, as she still had to go to the prison later to interrogate the imprisoned black magician. Rolly Beyond realized she was here for Lies Matter, but they had already decided to handle it according to Yarrow's laws. This seemed completely different from what Goyard had said. So what should be done now? Eugene was just shocked. She had both a big pocket watch and a small watch, held a cigarette but didn't light it. What kind of big shot was this? Carmen confidently immersed herself in her own world, as if everything here had nothing to do with her. Eugene didn't know how to speak up and could only use his eyes to signal the White Tower Master that the transaction must continue. At this moment, the White Tower Master thought, if I borrow the Storm Sword for 3 hours, I can get my cloak back in 2 months. The more she thought about it, the angrier the White Tower Master became. So, she simply stopped thinking. She just wanted to sign quickly, finish quickly, and quickly get away from these calculating people. Just like that, Eugene got the dark cloak, and the White Tower Master got the storm sword she had been longing for. At this time, Carmen said, "This style is not bad. I really like the fluffy fur collar. It reminds one of a lion's mane. It's just that the color has some flaws. If it were white, it would be even cooler." What was she talking about? What did this have to do with her? Seeing Eugene standing still, Carmen just looked at him like that. Stare on the side said, "Quick, take it off for her. She wants to try it on. If she wants to wear it, why doesn't she say so herself? How can a big shot say such things herself?" Seeing that Carmen was already prepared, Eugene could only helplessly offer up the dark cloak. With a swoosh, the cloak was draped over Carmen. Carmen posed by herself, not forgetting to critique the cloak while doing so. The chest should have a lion ornament. The back is too plain. It could be embroidered with the family crest. Hearing this, the White Tower Master said, "This is just a loan to you all. Don't mess around with it. How would a big shot pay attention to others' anger?" She directly turned and left. The magician looked back and said, "Coming with us, Stare." Stare said, "No, I want to stay with Eugene." Then the two went shopping on the street, preparing to pick out gifts for the second lady. Eugene took the opportunity to reveal to Stare about Xian's fondness for rabbit ears and uniforms, including those unspeakable books he hid under his bed. After all, Xian would become the family head in the future. If all the maids in the main family dressed as bunny girls, it would damage the family's image. But he also hoped Stare could consider Xian's dignity and pretend she discovered it accidentally. Stare said, "So, you don't like rabbit ears?" Eugene said, "Who would like such weird things? They're so strange. Speaking of which, why do you want me to follow you when you're shopping?" Stare turned to look at Eugene, her helpless eyes full of disappointment. Stare said, "Do you really want me to wander alone in a foreign country?" Eugene said, "It's not like you'd get lost." Stare said, "Your mouth says you're unwilling, but your body is quite honest. If you have the guts, don't follow me." Eugene looked embarrassed. His strong survival instinct made him shut up in time. Stare was very curious about how Eugene spent his birthday and whether he received any gifts. Eugene said Roly Bon and Hara wanted to give him gifts, but he refused them. Hearing this, Stare asked, "Who is Hara? Is she a woman?" Eugene said, "Yes, she's a magician from the Red Magic Tower." "You didn't come to Yarrow just to buy gifts, did you? What exactly are you planning to do with Master Carmen?" Stare said, "So, you found out?" It turned out Stare was pestering Carmen, wanting to become her follower. After all, Cheyenne would become the family head, and she had no interest in being family head. Plus, the second lady wanted her to go through an arranged marriage. Speaking of this, Stare secretly glanced at Eugene, but Eugene had no reaction, so she could only turn around and panic. If she could become a Big Shot's follower, she wouldn't have to worry about the future. The second lady also wouldn't be able to arrange her marriage. Eugene very much agreed with Stir's choice. If you have plans, go fight for them yourself. Lyde had also been taken back to her maternal family by the First Lady and was now urgently hiring a family tutor to continue studying magic. Everyone had a bright future. Stir said, "Let's not talk about unhappy things, let's go eat." Eugene discovered that Stir had indeed grown up. He couldn't believe this 17-year-old girl was only 14 3 years ago. She was no longer the unremarkable girl from before. Meanwhile, on the other side, the black magician in prison had been beaten to within an inch of his life. But even under such brutal torture, he hadn't spoken. At this time, a figure in the darkness slowly said, Japhet had been practicing black magic for decades, but his talent was limited. If he died like this, his soul would belong to the demon race. So he took risks to contact Lyde, vainly hoping to use Reinhardt to gain power. This was all his personal behavior. Carmen said, "I heard the succubus queen wasn't involved in this matter." "So were you involved? Borzak Robes?" He was now accused of luring a sunny youth into black magic. Although they had no evidence that he did it, he also had no evidence proving he didn't do it. After all, he didn't look like a good person, no matter how you looked at it. He immediately retorted, "Slander, absolute slander. If I had done it, I would have made it seamless. How could I leave evidence? Do you want to hear what you're saying?" He bowed his head in apology and cooperation with the investigation, only because his style had always been low-key and steady. "What gave you the illusion that I was someone who could be manipulated at will?" In the critical moment, Jiwon instantly flashed in front to block. In an instant, a murderous atmosphere permeated the entire space. Carmen said, "Looks like you're planning to fight first." Seeing the Black Tower Master so determined, she decided to compromise first. After all, torture and mental magic hadn't yielded any information. Rashly starting a group fight would be somewhat impulsive. The Black Tower Master also stopped being murderous, saying that recently the weather had been dry and everyone's temper was a bit hot. He absolutely had no reason to plot this matter and was very innocent. Carmen asked, "What about the other male succubus who planned to contract with Lyd?" The Black Tower Master said, "He's not convenient to come himself right now. Are you sure you want to see?" Carmen said, "I don't care." Hearing this, the Black Tower Master smiled and directly raised his right hand. Pure evil power actually materialized into a shadow giant hand, instantly tearing through the space above. Then a demon's head was grabbed out. The Black Tower Master said, "He didn't die peacefully. Do you need me to wrap it up for you?" Then he deliberately dropped the head on the ground, saying, "Oops, my hand slipped." Carmen kicked the head in the air. The head instantly exploded with fresh blood. The flying blood splattered onto the Black Tower Master's face. Then Carmen also called the knights to leave, saying, "I hope this matter really has nothing to do with you. Also, don't contact Eugene Reinhardt." The Black Tower Master said, "Only the reclusive Demon King can control me. If you have nothing else, you should go back and rest." Carmen didn't pay attention to the Black Tower Master's words. After all, there was currently no evidence that he did it. She suspected it was another black magician who had contracted with the reclusive Demon King, Amelia. This woman had always been coveting the Black Tower Master position and was also trying to incite war between Nahama and the Hill Empire. If the Hill Empire prepared for war, then the Reinhardt family would also participate. Then the logic of seducing the main family's eldest son would be complete. Of course, this was currently just speculation without evidence. Carmen asked what would happen if they had fought with the Black Tower Master just now. Jiwon felt that except for Carmen, they would all die there. He really wasn't good at fighting magicians. Carmen was also worried about team casualties, so she didn't make a move. Otherwise, how could the proud Carmen be so approachable? Although Lyd returned to the First Lady's maternal family, he would have to live under the black unvoiced surveillance for the rest of his life. I heard the First Lady was hiring a family magic tutor. They couldn't rule out the possibility of the mastermind contacting Lyd again. Jin never understood why a youth who loved magic so much would be obsessed with black magic. Hopefully, after returning to his maternal family, he could reform himself. Still here, That's a like then. Subscribe too? Don't be shy. Then the group prepared to return to the Reinhardt main family. Ster also ended her brief reunion with Eugene. Although reluctant to part, she could only wave goodbye. Eugene Reinhardt, do you want to join the Black Envoy Knights? I heard the second squad captain is just short of a follower. Want to struggle 30 years less? But actually, she was the second squad captain herself. Thank you for your kind offer, but I just want to play now and don't want to work yet. At this time, there seemed to be some regret in Carmen's eyes, but it had been so long. Why was there still no news from the White Tower Master? She should still be working hard. If she succeeded, she would definitely come to show off. At this moment, there was a figure standing in the storm atop the White Magic Tower. The White Tower Master was holding the storm sword high, but clearly the progress wasn't good. Her face was flushed red, and she wasn't wearing clothes because being naked could awaken bodily senses. Even though she was shivering from cold, she still gritted her teeth and persisted. All of this was to summon the Wind Spirit King. Fortunately, she could only see the wind, not the Spirit King. Suddenly, golden lightning appeared in the sky, but she couldn't be happy about it. It was the neighboring Lightning Spirit King who had come. The White Tower Master said, "I didn't summon you. What are you coming out for?" The Lightning Spirit King said, "The Wind Spirit King asked me to give you a message. Go home quickly and stop acting like a hooligan on the tower top." The White Tower Master said, "I am history's strongest spirit summoner. Come out and face me personally. Why send messages through others?" The Lightning Spirit King just felt speechless and directly sent down thunder. The thunder struck the White Tower Master. After being struck by lightning, the White Tower Master collapsed to the ground. Actually, the Wind Spirit King would never contract with the White Tower Master. The Wind Spirit King wanted to go to the demon realm that no one had ever conquered. That was a promise he couldn't forget for hundreds of years. 10 days later, the White Tower Master appeared before Eugene looking completely dejected. "I'm standing right in front of you. Tell me how I'm different from before." Taking on another male elemental king also requires moderation. You're deliberately mocking me here, aren't you? When I go crazy, even I'm afraid of myself. The trembling Eugene didn't dare to say anything. Then the White Tower Master kept cursing the Wind Spirit King. Mel, who couldn't stand it anymore, suddenly jumped down from her chair and walked angrily toward the White Tower Master. "You need to keep quiet here, old lady." This address instantly drove the White Tower Master mad. Eugene on the side exclaimed that he couldn't take it. When she went crazy, she was indeed terrifying. It seemed the contracting situation hadn't gone smoothly. If the loan is for 7 days, then the Dark Cloak will be a loan to me for 10 years. If you return the Storm Sword now, I can give you a 10% discount. I'll count it as 9 years. Hearing this, the White Tower Master instantly froze. 9 years? The White Tower Master tremblingly handed the Storm Sword to Eugene. This was really a huge loss. "You must wear my dark cloak well. When it gets cold, remember to put on extra clothes. It will be afraid of cold air." After seeing off the White Tower Master, Eugene continued reading fairy tale picture books. This section told the story of the giant race. They were thick, big, and tall. Once the demon race's lackeys, they could easily trample cities and possess the testicles that the big cousin longed for. But today, their good days were over because standing in front was the great Bimut. The human knights were immediately filled with confidence, shouting loudly that they wanted to fight together and become famous as a group. But at the time, the only one on the field who could fight monsters was Bimut's companion, the warrior Helmo. Facing the thick, strong, and fierce giants, the two could still clearly distribute tactics. After all, those who could fight monsters were naturally also monsters. The battle didn't last long. The giant leader's neck was easily severed. The remaining giants were also cremated by the beautiful, kind, gentle, and lovely Lady Sina. Eugene said, "Was this fairy tale picture book written by Sia?" Hearing this, Mel felt speechless. Eugene said, "Because the adjectives describing Sina here are particularly numerous." Mel said angrily, "Who adds adjectives when writing a diary? If you keep talking nonsense, I'm going to punch you." Eugene put down the picture book. He was preparing to challenge the book magic once again. Mel felt Eugene still lacked self-awareness, but Eugene felt that challenging difficulties was basic operation. Whether successful or not, it would be more meaningful. Recently, Eugene had been spending time in AK. The Eternal Hole used a huge ring to lock infinite rings. If he could replace this method with white flame-style rings, the power would be greater. In his previous life, when he was still Helmo, he could create his own cultivation method with just cheap street goods, worth 9.99 comma accelerating magic power eruption through internal explosions, easily severing the giant leader's limbs. His combat instincts even earned Beamwood's admiration. Now reborn, Eugene's talent was top tier. Even seeing the Eternal Hole now wouldn't make him lose consciousness. He could completely see clearly that absurd magic power movement. Then he could definitely recreate the Eternal Hole using the white flame method. Time flew by, and 2 years later, Eugene had reached 19 years old. He was still working as hard as ever. Mel said, "It's already mealtime. Why aren't you going to eat?" Eugene was indeed a bit hungry at this time, but he had inspiration right now and was writing as if divinely inspired. After all, he needed to complete his thesis early, but Mel didn't want him to work so hard. Ordinary magicians needed decades to organize their magic thesis. She felt it was still too early for Eugene, and that he should focus on cultivation for another 10 years. Eugene said, "Our Mel is really cute." This instantly made Mel blush, but she was actually over 200 years old. She felt Eugene should be more respectful in how he addressed her, so Eugene said, "Our Grandma Mel is really cute. Maybe I should just kill him after all." But Eugene knew Mel actually couldn't bear to let him leave. In these 2 years, Rolbian had made Eugene his disciple. For 2 years, Eugene spent half his time in AKC and half his time learning magic with Rolbian. His level of effort was unmatched by anyone. Actually, Eugene's thesis could only be understood by himself, or rather others could understand it, but couldn't learn it. Eugene used white flame-style stars to replace rings to simulate the Eternal Hole. Ordinary magicians didn't know white flame style. Those in the main family who used white flame style couldn't understand it. Rolibon tried to simulate it using other methods and almost ruined himself. Now Eugene had reached white flame style 4 stars, then made magic power explode continuously like in his previous life as Helmo. The rotating white flame style would firmly lock the surging magic power. This was ringing flame style. Magicians who first encountered the book magic all frantically wanted to understand and explore further. But after realizing their limits, very few could persist. Therefore, in these 2 years, only Eugene persisted in coming to AK Clevin. Mel said after completing this thesis, "Will you leave Yarrow?" Eugene didn't speak, but the answer was naturally yes. Eugene still had to search for traces of his companions, but Mel hoped Eugene could stay. As long as Eugene was willing, he would be the next Red Tower Master. The Mage Corps commander also thought highly of Eugene. He just happened to have an unmarried granddaughter. Also, the Crown Prince had shown goodwill toward Eugene more than once. Staying in Yarrow was Eugene's optimal path to the peak. Mel didn't understand why Eugene wanted to leave. Even if he returned to Reinhardt, Eugene couldn't become the family head. Eugene said, "You're anxious. What am I anxious about? Why would I be anxious?" "Because I insist on leaving. So you're anxious. Fine, leave if you want. As if anyone would try to keep you. Anyway, I'm not human, just an emotionless familiar. It doesn't matter if you leave me in this boring, quiet, and meaningless place. But please tell me before you leave. Don't just leave without a word like Lady Senna did." Eugene said he understood. Eugene's straightforward answer left Mel speechless for a moment. This made Mel both ashamed and angry. "Eugene, you're really garbage." "What kind of garbage am I? Dry garbage or wet garbage? Can't you focus on the main point, Eugene?" Mel loudly accused Eugene of being impolite, being so disrespectful to elders at such a young age. Actually, Mel didn't want Eugene to stay in Yarrow because of her either. She felt she was designed based on Lady Senya's childhood period. So she always said childish things and did childish things. She hoped Eugene wouldn't mind. The real Lady Senya wouldn't do such things. She felt like an idiot saying these things, and Mel was very embarrassed about it. Eugene said, "Actually, the real Sena isn't much better than you." Mel felt Eugene was just talking nonsense. He had never met Lady Signia and was just imagining based on descriptions in fairy tale books. Facing such a fierce Mel, Eugene smiled gently and said, "I'll be able to complete my thesis soon, probably before summer ends." "So what?" Before leaving. "I'll definitely come find you. I have a secret to tell you then." "What secret?" But Eugene didn't speak. Eugene turned to leave, saying, "Don't overthink it. I'll tell you everything then." During this time, the Magic Guild leader had also been pestering Eugene endlessly. Eugene was getting psychological trauma from him. Although the Magic Guild leader was also very capable, he was actually only interested in Eugene's talent. Unfortunately, Eugene wasn't interested in him, including his unmarried granddaughter. "Eugene, you wouldn't want your magic thesis to fail, would you?" He guessed Eugene's grades weren't ideal, so he said, "My professional skills are solid, and my spatial magic is also very good. I can go anywhere. I'm qualified to help you check and complete your thesis," but he actually didn't even know what Eugene's thesis was about. Eugene had recreated the Eternal Hole and created Ring Flame style. Apart from the Red Tower Master, he hadn't revealed this to anyone. If he found out, wouldn't he be crawling into his bed every day from now on? This place wasn't suitable to stay long. He had to leave quickly. After returning to the Red Magic Tower, Eugene focused on practicing magic. Roll Beyond discovered that even when Eugene used elementary magic, the power alone already far exceeded 5 rings. But currently, Eugene's magic limit was 4 rings. He still couldn't fit Heil magic into the Eternal Hole. Simply put, the capacity had reached its limit. After all, Eugene was currently only White Flame style 4 stars, and hadn't perfectly recreated the Eternal Hole. Perhaps when White Flame style's realm improved, there would be a breakthrough. But there were also hidden dangers. After all, this was a newly created magic style. Each realm needed to be explored by himself. He had to be cautious. Learning that Eugene was preparing to leave Yarrow, Royan was also very curious about Eugene's future plans, because he couldn't tell him about his companions. Eugene could only say he'd first go to the Haru Kingdom to try the mystic Ice Emperor Crab, because that was the country established by that fool Moran. Then go to Nehama to taste Scorpion Cactus, which was also where last appeared. Rolibon hadn't expected Eugene to be such a foodie. Yarrow just happened to have flame lobster. He could try it first. Never expected that they would encounter Yarrow's crown prince while having a meal. Inexplicably, the three formed a table together. The crown prince expressed great apology for disturbing their meal, so he'd keep it short. He hoped Eugene would stay in Yarrow. He promised to make Eugene the leader of the Court Magic Guild. Of course, only after he became Yarrow's king in 10 years. This statement left Roll beyond speechless. The current king was still alive and kicking. Wasn't he risking his life talking like this? The crown prince hurriedly clarified that he was the first heir to the throne, and the king had already agreed. You could only say this crown prince was too young, who would wait 10 years for his promise. So Eugene refused. "You don't even understand my magic realm. It's still too early to talk about this now." The crown prince said, "The reason I don't understand is because you've hidden it too well. But why hide it? Could there be reasons you have to hide?" So he boldly speculated. He could see Eugene's body was full of magic power, and the magic quantity already far exceeded 5 rings. He continued asking, "You understood the eternal hole in the book magic, didn't you?" Eugene said, "Must I answer you?" The crown prince said, saying, "That is worse than directly denying it." This way of speaking that neither admits nor denies was very much in line with Eugene's low-key and steady style. Although Eugene had no interest in the position of Mage Corps commander either, he no longer had worldly desires. Then, the crown prince threw out another ace. As everyone knew, Sa completed 3 volumes of magic. Claven only preserved the first volume. The remaining 2 had always been kept in the royal palace's treasury. Now both Eugene and Roly Beyond couldn't sit still. But according to Mel, the remaining 2 volumes of magic were taken away by Senna. So when did the royal family start keeping them? Facing Eugene's question, the crown prince quickly explained that the royal family kept copies given by Lady Say. The royal family didn't know where the originals were now. Of course, he wouldn't show them to Eugene now. He'd have to wait until he ascended the throne in 10 years. This guy was simply too confident, using empty promises to make people work for him for 10 years. Ridiculous. This morning, Eugene finally completed his thesis. Mel was amazed to discover that the star core and eternal whole were perfectly combined. Although still far from Zenya's level, it was much more powerful than the current mainstream magic styles. But Mel couldn't feel happy because this meant Eugene was about to leave. She could only express with a tsundere attitude that there was still much room for improvement, hoping Eugene would go back and study harder. But Eugene said he would leave the day after tomorrow. The day after tomorrow? With your personality, shouldn't you leave tomorrow? That sounds nice. You should be able to eat lots of delicious food. Eugene didn't say anything. He just looked at Mel with indulgence. 3 months ago, I told you I had a secret to tell you before leaving. Do you remember? I remember. Then would you tell others about the secret you heard? Upon hearing this, Mel immediately hugged her shoulders. She said, although I'm not human, you can't doubt my character. What a big secret is it so shameful? I was reborn. Are you serious? I was reborn and with memories from my previous life. Is this how people trick children nowadays? My previous life was called Helmo Davis. At this moment, Mel was shocked. She couldn't say a word at all. But seeing Eugene looking at her with a serious face, she instantly blushed and lowered her head to avoid his gaze. If Eugene was really reborn, then many things would make sense. Learning for only 2.5 years, yet understanding the eternal whole, and even converting it into a form that suited himself. After all, the foolish Helmo was a very special figure. The wise Senya grew up in the elven forest, taught magic by elves since childhood. The brave Moor was the son of a polar tribe chief, specializing in hands-on ability. The honest Annie's was a candidate saint, carefully cultivated by the Holy Empire. The great Bahamut was a slave taken by demons as a sacrifice. To survive, he seized the demon's sword. The first time he held a sword, he killed hundreds of demons and dark mages, successfully leading the slaves to escape from Haymuter. Mel had always thought that was legend, told too exaggeratedly. But Eugene felt that should be the truth. Bimut was just a monster. In contrast, Helmo's story was much clearer. He wasn't like Bamut, an elite, nor did he have special background or power behind him. As a child, he barely survived the Demon Village massacre. With hatred toward demons, he became a mercenary. Through his own efforts, he gradually gained strength comparable to his companions. Mel said, although in fairy tale books, he was the team's comic relief. Eugene said, can we not mention that fairy tale book anymore? At that time, I had almost no magical talent to surpass Bamut. I focused on practicing martial arts. Compared to Bamut, Helmo was indeed ordinary. But in the public's eyes, he was also undoubtedly a monster. What kind of monster is that? Couldn't even withstand mere fatal wounds. At this moment, Mel suddenly remembered Eugene had repeatedly praised Helmo's phantom as handsome. So, she said, how did you have the face to say such things? Eugene said, this python-like suffocating charm. Can't you feel it even now? After joking, Mel was very puzzled why Eugene told her he was reborn. She really didn't know S.A.'s whereabouts. Eugene said, I'm not trying to gather information. You and Saw are really alike. Whether appearance or personality, you're really like her. Am I overstepping Grandma Mel? I'll forgive you this time. According to what you said, you should be older than me. Do you think S.A. really died? Mel certainly didn't think so. She felt Sia must still be alive. Eugene also firmly believed Senna wouldn't die quietly, including Morn and Annis. They should all still be living somewhere in this world. Therefore, no matter how long it took, Eugene would definitely find them. At this moment, Mel said she had something to say. She still harbored weariness about Eugene's rebirth, unless Eugene could swear in front of magic. So Eugene said, I swear I Eugene's sworn enemies with gambling and drugs. Can you be serious at a time like this? I swear by my soul. I Eugene Reinhardt am the reincarnation of Helmo Davis. As soon as he finished speaking, Mel's eyes along with the magic simultaneously burst into light, as if verifying Eugene's oath. Then Mel said that since Lord Senna's disappearance, many mages had analyzed her in magic, but they still couldn't detect the information recorded deep within the magic, including today's conversation content would also be recorded there. She also had intelligence to share with Eugene. Sa's disappearance had omens. A week before she disappeared, she suddenly cried out in pain and collapsed. Her other familiar had been killed. Mel had never seen Sinea so angry because this meant Helmo's grave had been invaded. Eugene had never thought he would actually have a grave and didn't know who had dug it up. Mel had never told anyone about this. She didn't want to cause trouble for Lord Senior by saying something she shouldn't. But if Eugene was Helmo's reincarnation, she thought he should have the right to know. Usually those who died from lich curses would have their bones scattered. Eugene thought he wouldn't be an exception either. But since his soul could reincarnate intact, did it mean his body hadn't disappeared either? All this must be because of Senna. Eugene talked with Mel until deep into the night before leaving 11. Never thought he'd have a day when he couldn't find his own grave. It should be a place related to himself. Definitely not the reclusive Demon King's castle. Then it must be his hometown, just as Eugene was thinking. The Black Tower Master appeared silently behind him. Actually, Eugene had noticed long ago, but kept pretending not to see. Unexpectedly, he still insisted on coming over to chat. The Black Tower Master knew Eugene was preparing to leave Yarao the day after tomorrow, heading to Luhal. This made him a bit worried because it was very close to the demon realm, High Mood. So what the Black Tower Master said? The Reinhardt family's status didn't work well over there. Himmler had 2 demon kings, including some who didn't submit to the reclusive demon king's discipline. You mean the Destruction Demon King is preparing to start a war? The Destruction Demon King was the #1 demon king? In his previous life, Helmo had seen him in action once. But even now, he couldn't judge what he had actually seen at that time. He only remembered a color moving on a vast plain. At that time, no one could say they'd go kill him if not for Anis's prayer stabilizing everyone. Their bodies might have shown unseemly symptoms of madness. The Demon King's thoughts were temporarily unknown, but demons were brutal by nature. Many of them were already tired of peace. To break the status quo, they might use any means necessary. Of course, some high-level demons had thoughts of rising in rank. After all, among the 5 demon kings, there were still 3 positions available. Eugene smiled lightly and said, "Fighting and killing isn't good. If they want to rise in rank, wouldn't it be nice for everyone to gather and draw lots?" But Eugene knew clearly that his current self definitely couldn't beat highly demons. Then there was no need to clash head-on. Just don't go to Luhal for now. He then the Black Tower Master for the warning, saying he was preparing to change course to Nahama. The Black Tower Master said, "If you're going to Nahama, then please be careful of the desert." "Are you telling me to be careful of sand?" "No, I'm referring to Amelia. She has high freedom at the secluded Demon King's place. If you have conflict with her, you can take out this. Are you asking me to help you deliver a letter? Then I need to inspect the goods first." The Black Tower Master said, "Feel free." Eugene certainly wouldn't be polite, casually tearing open the envelope. However, after opening the envelope, it was actually empty inside. "You better give me a perfect explanation. The content doesn't matter. This is my handwritten letter. When you're being beaten, taking it out should save your life. Showing courtesy without reason means either treachery or theft. But the Black Tower Master said he just wanted to make friends. You don't like men, do you?" Hearing this, the Black Tower Master was speechless. Everyone has different preferences. Let's just part ways here. Seeing the conversation taking a strange turn, the Black Tower Master quickly raised his hand to interrupt Eugene. He just saw potential in Eugene. Very pure thoughts, absolutely no improper intentions. Eugene said, "I'll take the letter, but I won't date you. If there's nothing else, I'm preparing to go home for dinner." Although the Black Tower Master occasionally jumped out to make his presence known, everyone knew that black mages definitely weren't good people. The next evening, the Blue Tower Master came as promised to attend Eugene's farewell party. He was very surprised that Eugene would invite him. For instance, those who liked getting under blankets, the ugly ones, and the annoying ones didn't come. Indeed, being human depends on peers, for contrast. Although Eugene was a rare genius, the Blue Tower Master wasn't interested. Speaking of which, the Black Tower Master and Blue Tower Master had once studied under the same teacher. But whether in the past or now, no one had ever been able to understand the Black Tower Master's true thoughts. Decades ago, he was already a very excellent mage. Without accident, he would surely be the next Blue Tower Master. But one day, he left alone. When he returned, he had become a black mage and took control of the Black Magic Tower. Perhaps it was for pursuing power. After all, human magic ultimately couldn't compare to demon kings. He said, "I heard you're planning to go desert touring. That's not exactly a tourist destination. It's best to hide your identity after entering." The Blue Tower Master bluntly said the desert was currently very chaotic. Several days later, Eugene, who had left Yarao, finally arrived at the desert. The dark cloak could not only change its appearance at will, but also adjust temperature according to the owner's senses. It was just that convenient, truly worthy of being the #1 divine equipment for home travel and deception. Give the White Tower Master a thumbs up. According to the map given by the mage, his current position was the easternmost part of Nama. Just heading west should lead him to Turas, Helmo's former hometown. Over the past 300 years, the desert's territory had continuously expanded. Small countries like Turas had long been swallowed by the desert. This was also the desert sorcerer's method of invasion and expansion. Wherever sandstorms blew, they would go there to plant flags. Their ambition was as endless as sandstorms. Even after 300 years, there was still no restraint. It seemed this journey would definitely be exciting. "Please wait a little longer, Senna. Honest and mourn. I will definitely find you all." But at this moment, Eugene didn't know. His every move was already under someone else's surveillance. This guy really has guts, daring to cross the desert alone. If his head wasn't broken, then he must have something to rely on. Big Beard actually didn't want to have conflict with Eugene either, but the order he received was to drive Eugene out of the desert. It seemed he could only let Eugene experience the desert's hospitality. But at this moment, Eugene in the distance was rapidly charging toward them. They were clearly 800 li apart. Could he be discovered even at this distance? Eugene was coming over. Seeing Eugene arrive in an instant, Big Beard immediately panicked. But Eugene's speed was too fast, giving him no time to react at all. As they say, when in doubt, draw your blade first. There's no problem that a straightforward approach can't solve. Just disguise his bandits. First, rob his wealth, then strip off his clothes. Then all problems would be solved. I'm really a genius. Originally, Eugene just sensed someone following. Now the other party was clearly hostile. He had been gnawing on books, learning magic in Yarrow every day. He almost forgot. Real men need to clash head-on. He went up and slashed at Big Beard, but Big Beard dodged by moving aside. Seeing he couldn't win, Big Beard quickly retreated directly, calling his subordinates to rush forward together. They instantly surrounded Eugene, but Eugene wasn't to be trifled with either. He was a man with his own BGM and Gatling. Not only could he cast instant magic, but it also came with tracking and positioning. He easily knocked them all to the ground. Eugene said, "Hey, who are you? Why are you following me?" Big Beard said, "Young hero, it's all a misunderstanding. We're just bandits passing by." Eugene smiled coldly upon hearing this. A bandit group with fewer than 10 people could actually use sword energy. Even his big cousin wouldn't believe such lies, but it didn't matter. Eugene was best at making people tell the truth. Eugene said, "Don't worry, I'll be very gentle. Take a deep breath. Dizziness is normal." He disappeared. He used flash-up. Big Beard looked completely confused and uneasy. The next moment, Eugene flashed in front of Big Beard, using sword energy so skillfully at such a young age. This must be a monster. The rising sand dust obscured Eugene's figure. Little Beard was afraid Eugene would cheat again and use the Gatling. He quickly summoned a magic shield to give himself armor. Sure enough, this time Eugene showed no mercy at all. Little Beard's magic shield shattered instantly. This definitely wasn't the power a wonering magic bullet should have. But reality didn't give him time to think. Eugene attacked again. Big Beard saw he was about to die by the sword. He even saw his deceased great-grandmother waving at him. But Eugene gracefully withdrew. That's right. He was just playing to look down on him like this. Big Beard roared in fury, swinging his sword and charging at Eugene. But it was all in vain. Shouting loudly didn't add critical hits for Eugene. This was just a warm-up. He even had time to fix his hairstyle. The reason Eugene was so arrogant was purely because he was pent up. This was his first real fight since being reborn. He was far from satisfied. Unfortunately, Big Beard's strength was insufficient. Eugene could even carve patterns on his opponent without any pressure to be carved with patterns by someone's sword. When had Big Beard ever suffered such humiliation? But this charged attack only hit air. It didn't hurt Eugene at all. At this moment, Eugene put away his storm sword. That's right. This wave really let him show off. Big Beard was instantly furious. His 30-year rheumatic legs were cured at this moment. Then he swung the peak strike of his life. Unfortunately, Eugene dodged it by crouching low, then took the opportunity to punch him in the stomach. This time, Big Beard really saw his deceased great-grandmother. Fortunately, Eugene pulled him back to reality, giving him a strike to help him stay conscious. Eugene said, "Game time is over. Who are you?" He said, "I'm little Robert Downey." Hearing this, Eugene gave him another strike and said, "I don't want to know your name." Big Beard was puzzled, but Eugene didn't give him time to think. At this moment, a subordinate woke up. To save Big Beard, he prepared to confess everything to Eugene. Big Beard acted quite tough, refusing to reveal who was behind him. But Eugene had ways to make him shut up. From the subordinate's words, Eugene learned they had received orders from someone called Madani, telling them to secretly follow Eugene. When necessary, prevent Eugene from stepping into the desert center. They didn't know the specific reasons. The current desert center was once Helmo's hometown. That was the source of sandstorms, most likely also the base of the sandstorm sorcerers. Then they definitely didn't want foreigners to enter, especially a young master of the Reinhardt family. Forget it. Can't think about it anymore. Eugene said, "You two go, you come with me." Eugene planned to have Big Beard guide him. Having a local to scout ahead should avoid many small troubles. Big Beard's heart naturally refused, but Eugene said, "If you don't cooperate, then I'll return to the Reinhardt main house. Say that the Desert Lord's subordinates, disguised as bandits, tried to rob Reinhardt treasures. This is Vey once worn by the great Bimut. And of course, the dark cloak on me. This is the precious treasure of Yarao's White Tower, master. She would definitely beat up all of you." Hearing this, Big Beard's heart trembled. He hadn't expected Eugene to be so shameless. Besides kneeling and obeying orders, there was no other way. Eugene smiled wickedly, never thought he'd have a day of intellectual crushing. Big Beard said, "Where do we go next? What happens next? You'll know what happens next." Regarding Eugene's cunning behavior, Big Beard really wanted to kick his balls, but his strength really didn't allow it. Eugene was simply too strong in terms of power. Big Beard quickly expressed he would absolutely obey orders, following his lead like couples, but Eugene suddenly approached at this moment and said, "Don't use idioms if you don't know how." The Kazani Desert was originally Taurus's territory. It was the desert sorcerers who turned the land to sand and implemented invasion. Big Beard simply couldn't believe it. He thought his master, Commander Kira, would never participate in such things. Eugene mocked him for being too naive. Big Beard was also from Kazani, barely surviving the sandstorm. It was Commander Kira who took him in. So he instinctively rejected connecting Kira with sandstorms. And Eugene was, after all, a prodigy from a legendary family. If he broke into land that was being desertified, they'd have to kill him to silence him. This was exactly the reason to prevent Eugene from entering the desert. To find out the truth, Big Beard decided to step forward and protect Eugene, boasting that he also had some reputation in the desert. Whoever saw him would call him Big Brother. But Eugene scoffed at this. Big Beard said, "You don't believe it. You'll see when the time comes." Eugene ignored Big Beard's muttering. After all, Senna was still waiting for him ahead. Just then, an oasis suddenly appeared before their eyes. Based on experience, Big Beard judged there shouldn't be an oasis here. Eugene said, "Experience will deceive you, but magic won't." Big Beard said, "It's actually magic." "Really? Oases in the desert are very precious. Could there be an ambush ahead?" Eugene said, "Want to know if there's an ambush? Go take a look and you'll know. Suddenly, a blade appeared from underground. Big Beard quickly warned him. In the critical moment, Eugene instantly leaped into the air, said, "Such an obvious trap. How could I possibly not see through it?" While in midair, Eugene summoned the storm spirit, directly launched a storm spiral. Big Beard was instantly blown down by the strong wind. Eugene's hairstyle was also messed up, so the enemies below were imaginable. This was weight he couldn't bear. Without surprise, he died. But where he fell, two sand mounds suddenly bulged up. Then more people followed one after another. They surrounded Eugene with hostile stares. At this moment, Big Beard finally found his sense of existence. He quickly ran over to protect Eugene, said, "This is Commander Kira's guest. You all quickly withdraw." Although Big Beard shouted loudly, obviously it had no effect. Eugene didn't want to waste time, and revealing one's identity was inherently very stupid. We've all come this far. How could they possibly not know who I am? At times like this, you can't be cowardly. Show your bandit spirit. Hearing this, Big Beard directly drew his great sword. Mere third-rate lackey Eugenie can suppress them with one hand. Come at me together. Hearing this, they all rushed forward. Eugene immediately got excited. Finally, he could show his skills, facing their attacks. Eugene leaped up and easily dodged, then directly shot out a critical hit, then jumped back in midair, smoothly, taking a double kill. Just that easy and pleasant. At this moment, one person thought he caught an opportunity and launched a sneak attack on Eugene. Unfortunately, he only struck Eugene's afterimage. Eugene's real body had already flashed behind him. Eugene easily dealt with him, but the crisis wasn't resolved yet. More people kept coming, but it was useless. As a prodigy of a legendary family, hiding some throwing knives in the cloak was very reasonable. But when one fell, two stood up and charged over. Eugene was also an old sword fighter, left hand using sword to easily block the frontal attack, right hand dealing with the sneak attack from behind. Then one sword resolved the frontal threat. Simply too easy. Of course, he'd occasionally use hidden weapons, too. This was the cunning person's fighting style, rejecting flashiness, precise movements, and elegant. Though their combat power wasn't high, they were all fearless of death. Big Beard on the side was directly stunned. They were all killed so quickly. The battle ended. Eugene didn't forget to recover his weapons. The ground was covered with corpses. Space magic was truly something he had mastered, carrying so many weapons when going out. In his previous life as Helmo, Eugene was skilled with multiple weapons, but back then he didn't know space magic. Going out relied entirely on human transportation. Anna saw this and said, "Trash Helmo, why do you need to carry so many weapons and make more and pull the cart too?" Helmo said, "None of your business." Sia said, "Honest, don't mind him. He's just traumatized by childhood poverty. Still thinks those broken things are worth money." Helmo said, "Weapons are a warrior's life. I may not use them, but I can't not have them. And Morin's axe is the heaviest. And you also put a bunch of holy water in there. You're just being pretentious. Say, what are you showing off about? Can't you use magic to put those things away?" Essay said, "Helmo, you big fool. You said you wanted to personally carry them yourself." Helmo turned to B and said, "What are you laughing at, Baimut? Why don't you pull the cart?" Baimut said, "There's none of my stuff there." "Why would I pull the cart?" Helmo said, "Yeah, you're so noble. You know space magic. You really should die, Bimut." Now thinking of his former companions was truly full of sweetness. If he had a dark cloak back then, Senna would definitely cry with envy. Eugene, coming back to his senses, coldly glanced at Big Beard. Eugene said, "The team fight ended, and now you come over." Big Beard said, "I was really trying to dissuade them just now." Eugene said, "I brought you hoping your master would be polite to me for your sake. Didn't expect you to be useless. You should just go wherever you're supposed to go, whether for other purposes or to find out the truth." Big Beard still planned to stay by Eugene's side. Eugene didn't care either, but the reason for bringing him definitely wasn't because traveling alone was a bit boring. But just then the ground suddenly trembled. Eugene instantly leaped into midair. The fallen corpses suddenly glowed with bloody red light. as if something eerie was about to emerge. This was being used as sacrifices at summoning magic. Deep underground, massive magical powers suddenly surged. Eugene was also shocked seeing this. A huge tornado struck. Fortunately, he could fly, but people's sorrows don't connect. Big Beard shouted, "Help! Help!" The suddenly appearing sandstorm was obviously abnormal. Strangely, it felt somewhat familiar. Back then, Big Beard didn't have a beard yet. It was this kind of sandstorm that destroyed his hometown. Thinking of this, Big Beard gritted his teeth in anger, directly charged at the tornado, swinging with all his might. This was Big Beard's highlight moment. Unfortunately, it didn't last long. How could a blade cut through wind? At this moment, Eugene was trying to escape using magic, but it was useless. He could only barely resist the tornado suction, and time was urgent. Something underground seemed to be trying to break out. This place was obviously not suitable for staying. But at this moment, Big Beard was already buried up to his lower half in sand, really useless at everything. Eugene used magic to pull him up and lift him into the air. Though the process wasn't pleasant, Big Beard had escaped danger. However, Eugene was now in great peril because he was right above a mouth full of fangs. The mouth closed, directly swallowing Eugene. Seeing this tragic scene, Big Beard thought he had harmed Eugene as a desert warrior with abundant hair. Valuing loyalty above all, how could he survive alone? Today, he must split open the sandworm's body and rescue Eugene. At this moment, Eugene was falling rapidly, about to reach the sandworm's stomach. Sandworms were creatures that specialized in internal circulation with no excretory organs at all. It seemed he could only draw his blade and force his way through. Actually, this wasn't really dangerous for Eugene. A mere sandworm. Just stab it open and be done, passing through the sandworm's intestines without getting stained. The key was confidence and elegance. Then let's solo this dungeon instance. The sandworm with a breakthrough open behind it quickly fled. Actually, the summoning magic only summoned the sandstorm. The sandworm originally lived underground in this area. This creature usually lived deep underground in the desert, building underground mazes. Essay once said, "Mages all loved sandworms. When they needed a secret base, they would find a sandworm, then wait about half a month before killing it, easily obtaining an underground city." Eugene said, "Who would want to live underground? Are you planning to change profession to witch?" Senna said, "When will you alliterate, grow a brain?" Had to say, "Still need to thank S.A.'s previous popular science, otherwise encountering this situation." Eugene really wouldn't have a solution. Maybe this underground city could even connect to Helmo's hometown. On the other side, the unconscious Big Beard finally opened his eyes. Before him were several people who obviously had bad intentions. His current state also seemed somewhat embarrassing. Regarding Big Beard's behavior, the other party expressed great admiration. Using just a small steel knife to solo a sandworm made them brothers, have to work hard to save him. Of course, this wasn't charity. They just wanted to know some information. Why did that Reinhardt young master insist on coming to this barren desert? Also, why did Big Beard, this lackey of Trash Commander Kira, betray and become Eugene's guide? When he appeared, he was clearly there to rob. Was he so easily turned? Big Beard certainly wouldn't confess honestly. He now just wanted to know if that oasis, illusion, and sandstorm were all created by their magic. The other party said, "Seems you haven't figured out the situation yet. Sandbinding technique." Suddenly, Big Beard felt pressure all over his body. The other party said, "There's an old saying in Yarrow, those who understand the times are heroes. I think you don't want to suffer physical pain either." Facing the other party's aggressive pressure, Big Beard chose to curse them head on. He now seriously suspected his hometown was destroyed by this bunch. The other party looked displeased, said, "You really are refusing a toast only to drink a penalty," then showed an evil smile, then clenched his hand, strengthening the sandbinding technique. Big Beard cried out in pain. Another person said, "See, asking is pointless. Still not cooperating. Just shoot him. Shoot him. Can't we try asking again?" While they were discussing, a handsome guy quietly appeared behind them. It was that Reinhardt young master. They were shocked by Eugene's sudden appearance, hurriedly activated their Byakugan to look into the distance, only to see that their large group of subordinates had already been completely wiped out. At that moment, the big beard shouted, "Help me!" Eugene said, "I know you're in a hurry, but don't panic just yet. Which one of you wants to go first? I have many things to do. I'm pressed for time." The opponent said, "Who dies first is hard to say." Then he began casting quicksand torrent, just when it seemed he would be engulfed by the quicksand. But Eugene remained completely calm. He simply pulled out a fragment of the moonlight sword and casually tossed it, then calmly put on his hood. The crisis was resolved. Elegant, truly elegant. When the dust settled, except for being a bit dusty, Eugene was completely unharmed. Without any magical fluctuations, he had dispelled the magic. They couldn't understand the principle at all, but they not panicked. 3 against 1, they felt they had a huge advantage. Since they decided to fight, then life and death would be left to fate. Sandstorm burial. At the critical moment, Eugene once again brought out a fragment of the moonlight sword. Actually, besides possessing anti-agic properties, it was also a rare, hidden weapon. It directly hit the opponent's forehead. The opponent collapsed immediately. Eugene gathered all his magical power and burst forth instantly, then followed with a flash step. This was a palm strike descending from heaven, but they didn't intend to sit and wait for death. While Eugene wasn't paying attention, they launched a sneak attack from behind, but Eugene easily dodged it and gave Eugene a whip strike. He could actually hide a whip inside his cloak. While complaining about this, he didn't know his death was approaching. Eugene showed no mercy and finished him off directly. 1 remained. Eugene decided to have a chat with him first. After all, he still had many things he needed to figure out. But looking at his condition, he didn't seem willing to cooperate to show politeness. Eugene gave him a cut first, saying, "Are you going to confess now?" Or, after taking a few more cuts unexpectedly, he was quite stubborn, pretending he knew nothing. Eugene wouldn't indulge his bad habits. He casually pulled out another throwing knife. The throwing knife hit him again. Eugene said, "Want to bet on how many more throwing knives I have?" He was truly terrified and could only speak, "It's Amelia Morven. This is Lady Amelia Morven's underground city." According to his confession, this underground city was built 10 years ago. Its purpose was to accelerate land desertification. But 6 years ago, the depths of the underground palace suddenly collapsed. Inside, there was even an iron door that couldn't be opened no matter what. So Amelia Morven would often come here, but she never managed to open that door. After getting the answer he wanted, Eugene decided to be merciful to the end. 1 strike right between the eyebrows let him sleep peacefully. The big beard was now free. However, upon hearing this was Amelia's territory, he was terrified. Although Amelia wasn't here now, there was always the risk of her returning. He hurriedly advised Eugene to make a strategic retreat, but Eugene saw through it all. He had made a mess of this place. Retreating now would obviously lead to being tracked, since he'd have to face her sooner or later anyway. Might as well go inside and investigate. Who knew the big beard was still silently following behind, unwilling to leave? Eugene had saved his life twice. So, the big beard intended to guard Eugene, swearing to carve out an escape route for Eugene, even if it cost his life. Eugene couldn't help but sigh. This person really wasn't capable, but loved to meddle no matter how much he was advised he wouldn't leave. Having no choice, Eugene decided to convince him with action. He flashed directly behind the big beard. 1 punch put him peacefully to sleep. Then he left that place. 6 years ago, the underground palace suddenly collapsed. At that time, Eugene was exactly 13 years old, also precisely when Helmo's relics were discovered. Was there any connection between these events? Could it be that Amelia had always wanted to dig up his grave? It seemed that deep pit below should be Helmo's tomb. Suddenly, he stepped into empty space. Eugene fell down. Eugene, who could fly, had already started flying. But Eugene discovered there was indeed a door below, and it was already open. It must have been Amelia's doing since he was already here. He had to go in and take a look no matter what. Broken walls and ruins, devastation everywhere. Who had fought here? Could it have been Senna? Eugene had many questions, but the scene before him left him completely stunned. Who was this handsome and heroic statue? This was too handsome. Truly worthy of me. Rugged yet refined and elegant. Hilmo Davis, star calendar, 421 to 459. Idiot, bastard, useless, childish, but brave, honest, reliable, and great. In memory of you who sacrificed yourself and died first for everyone's sake. Senna, you're really damn annoying. If you're so good with words, why didn't you say this when I was alive? I'm already dead. Who's going to hear it? You're really damn annoying, Senna. After a moment, Eugene finally stabilized his collapsed emotions. It must have been 200 years ago when she sensed the familiar's death. Sea engaged in fierce battle with the invaders here. At that time, she should have been the strongest mage in this world. But even so, the tomb still became ruins. Could Esse have been defeated and died here? But earlier in Yarrow, he clearly encountered her phantom. So Esse definitely didn't die. She must have been injured and went into hiding. Yes, that's it. Then who exactly could defeat such a powerful Senna? Was it the reclusive Demon King or the Destruction Demon King? Although he was reborn, Eugene still couldn't figure out the answer. His former companions should have all cried while hugging pillars here, but he still couldn't imagine that guy crying. Even after defeating powerful enemies during their journey, that guy would still arrogantly blame himself there, reflecting on how he hadn't done well enough. So there was a reason Helmo always wanted to beat him up. He was just being pretentious. Anna said, Helmo, can you please stop going crazy? Helmo said, you think the same way inside, don't you? You also want to beat him up, don't you? Anna said, as long as there's light in your heart, it will be filled with love. Don't be so violent, Helmo. Helmo thought, these two guys are teaming up to disgust me. Eugene, lost in memories, also began being sentimental. Today, he shed more tears than in his entire lifetime. But just at this moment, the wandering Eugene discovered there was actually a door ahead. Would his own coffin be inside? He pushed open the door. Unexpectedly, there was another door inside, and there was a guard here. Eugene asked, who are you? Why are you here? However, the other party said, nothing, just stood there stiffly. He felt no life force from him. Was he a death knight? Eugene said, I'm talking to you. Can't you understand? At this time, the other party spoke. I am Helmo Davis. Upon hearing this, Eugene was completely stunned. Angrily said, do you think you're being funny, you soulless death knight? Wait, this is Helmo's tomb. Could this death knight's body be? Eugene shouted. Bastard, take off your helmet right now. I told you to take off your helmet. Hurry up. Then Eugene directly attacked him, truly worthy of his former body, even though it contained a different soul. His combat power was still above standard. He had even solidified a magic shield. It seemed he wasn't a character that could be easily dealt with. The Death Knight also launched an attack. The attack was blocked by Eugene's sword, but it sent Eugene flying several meters. Such incredible strength. Eugene felt both his hands were aching faintly. The one who created this Death Knight should be Amelia. But no matter what kind of soul she stuffed inside, Eugene's current strength couldn't defeat it. It would require someone as strong as the family head or the Black Knight. But so what if he did nothing? Just let this guy wander around with his corpse? Then what would be the meaning of rebirth? As for whether he could actually win, that could only be known after fighting. Eugene struck down with all his might, but he dodged with a flash step. Eugene wasn't discouraged at all, pulling out weapons from his cloak. The Death Knight blocked with his sword, saying, you seem to carry a lot of plastic toys. What use are they? Eugene said, you talk too much. Just watch me beat you up. The Death Knight said, youthful confidence is good, but it can't bridge the gap between you and me. Then he flashed Eugene's front. Provocatively said, rookie, you're done for. Eugene said, you think this is over? With a flash of light, the Death Knight said, impossible. He couldn't possibly dodge that. Looking at Eugene's unchanged expression, the Death Knight now had many questions, Eugene thought. It seems his soul isn't some powerful character either. He doesn't even know about parrying. It's just that the strength is really too powerful. It seems this battle can't be dragged out too long. Although Eugene wanted to end it quickly, but after fighting for so long, he hadn't even broken through the defense. And Eugene's body was obviously reaching its limit. After each collision, he felt his bones might crack at any moment. But as long as his consciousness remained clear, Eugene could keep fighting. The long sword in his hand shattered again. Eugene resolutely drew the storm sword. All his magical power instantly flowed into it. The battle had just begun. Eugene was already getting heated up, knowing he couldn't win, but insisting on fighting anyway. Eugene shouted, "Gatling's art of all beings equal." Then attacks struck the Death Knight one after another. Although they didn't break through his defense, they finally gave Eugene an opportunity. He struck with his sword. This sword carried 300 years of skill. Could you block it? The Death Knight's mask split in two and fell to the ground. Eugene said, "You trash. Hurry up and turn around so I can see." However, when the other party turned his head, Eugene was stunned seeing his former self. Eugene was filled with mixed emotions. Truly a rather handsome man in the local area. Although the soul inside was extremely ugly, it couldn't hide that handsome and rugged appearance. The Death Knight said, "He is already dead, yet you still curse." He flew into a rage, then threw his sword. A mere flying sword could be dodged with a head tilt. But in the next instant, the Death Knight appeared right in front of him. One punch hit Eugene. Eugene was knocked back several meters. He had just thrown away his sword, yet his speed increased so much. Was that sword a seal? Eugene didn't know what to do. To kill the Death Knight, he had to destroy the core in the heart. Other methods couldn't harm the Death Knight at all, but overthinking was useless. Anyway, chopping him up would definitely kill him. Before he could think too much, the Death Knight charged again. Eugene struggled to barely defend himself. Eugene threw Gatling magic bullets again, but the opponent was too fast, impossible to hit. This beast-like alert posture, plus the claws formed by magic weapons, wrapped around his hands and feet. Wild fighting style, and the madness of losing reason, a werewolf. Amelia had put a werewolf's soul into Helmo's corpse, but the werewolf gave Eugene no time to think, directly lunging at his face. At the critical moment, Eugene once again brought out the Moonlight Sword fragment, but the werewolf's magic was too strong. The Moonlight Sword fragment couldn't completely dispel the magic, could only barely weaken some of the magic's power. In that case, he could only face it head-on. He lunged fiercely. One claw swiped at Eugene. Eugene, unable to dodge in time, was inadvertently scratched by the werewolf. But Eugene finally found an opportunity. Holding the Moonlight Sword fragment, he struck the werewolf's core with his palm. The werewolf cried out in pain, howled loudly. Eugene looked at his chest. The magic wrapping around the armor had weakened. Then it was now. Eugene unhesitatingly thrust his sword toward his chest again, through Gatling magic bullets. Through Gatling magic bullets, all hitting the werewolf. The Moonlight Sword fragment separated from the werewolf's chest, then fell to the ground. Eugene said, "With such a big tumor growing on your chest, you still have the nerve to call yourself Helmo." The werewolf had a big tumor on his chest. This made him seem a bit shy, but Eugene mocked that thing for growing so peculiarly. How could the werewolf endure this? He directly charged up for a ramming attack, knocking Eugene to the ground. The werewolf obviously didn't want to let Eugene go easily. Eugene immediately threw up. The scene instantly became somewhat wrong. The werewolf said, "Now reorganize your words." Although he no longer had the strength to fight, Eugene instinctively raised his middle finger. This completely enraged the werewolf. The werewolf pressed him down with both claws. Obviously, he wanted to tear Eugene directly in half. Eugene knew he had to do something immediately, otherwise he might really die. In his previous life as Helmo, he still had one killing move. But using a killing move with his current physical condition would be fatal. Just as Eugene was preparing to risk everything, the big beard came running from afar. Seeing Eugene in danger, the big beard directly drew his desert treasure sword. Noticing someone charging over, the werewolf lifted Eugene with one hand, then directly threw Eugene out. Eugene crashed into the wall. That probably hurt quite a bit. The big beard thought, "How dare you ignore me? You probably haven't been cut before." He struck down with his sword, but his sword shattered directly. Such a hard desert treasure sword just broke like that. The big beard said, "Run quickly, I've caught him." Eugene said, "You're obviously the one being caught. What are you trying to show off for?" But the big beard was still quite loyal. The next moment, the werewolf also threw the big beard over, directly crashing into Eugene. Both were sent flying. Both were rookies. No one should laugh at the other. The big beard was ready to buy Eugene time to escape, but Eugene discovered there seemed to be another way out. At this moment, there happened to be a door behind them. The werewolf wasn't panicked at all, claiming no one could open that door. Hearing him say this, Eugene wanted to try it even more. This was his Helmo's tomb, after all. Just as Eugene touched the stone door, the necklace on his chest faintly glowed. The stone door behind them suddenly opened. Under the werewolf's disbelieving gaze, Eugene and the other were instantly sucked into the door, leaving only the werewolf outside. On the other side, the big beard fell directly to the ground before he could see the situation clearly. Eugene directly knocked him unconscious. After all, it would be safer if he didn't get involved. Although the big beard hadn't helped at all, Eugene didn't want him to be killed for seeing things he shouldn't. At this time, the bright light in the distance caught Eugene's attention. Why would Bimit put this thing here? 300 years ago, they discovered a mysterious cave. Ancient writings that no one could understand were carved on the wall. Then, in the depths of the ruins, they found the moonlight sword. Helmo said, "Most of my weapons are broken. From now on, this sword is mine. Do you have any objections?" Unfortunately, the moonlight sword didn't acknowledge Helmo, didn't even let him touch it. It seemed that, after Helmo's death, Behemoth missed him dearly. He actually placed the moonlight sword here. Truly worthy of you, Bimu. Such filial devotion. The holy sword's power was all used for special effects. But the moonlight sword was different. It looked simple, but was incredibly powerful. Who would have thought you were such a devoted son, Behemoth, actually leaving the moonlight sword for me? When he first saw the moonlight sword, the moon shining on it was in full moon state. Now it had changed to a new moon. Had its power weakened, he wondered if it would react to the fragments. Oh no. After using that fragment against the werewolf, he forgot to pick it up. But that werewolf looked so stupid. He probably wouldn't notice that fragment. But he'd have to face him again when going out, and also guard against Amelia, who could return it at any time. Time was running short for Eugene. No matter why Beam would put you here, but from now on, you'll take the surname Eugene. In my previous life, you ignored me. In this life, you still fell into my hands. So Eugene reached out toward the moonlight sword. However, just by touching the moonlight, his magical power began surging uncontrollably. Even weakened to this extent, you still resist me. Times have changed. Eugene gripped it forcefully, but was bounced away by the moonlight sword's power. Fell directly to the ground, but he didn't let go. Let's see how you escape from my grasp this time. Then Eugene eagerly drew the storm sword. As expected, the moonlight sword now had no blade. At this time, the new moon began glowing. Countless fragments began gathering, wrapping around the sword hilt. The new moon actually assembled into a blade. Truly worthy of you, moonlight sword. As soon as the blade formed, magical power eagerly flowed into the moonlight sword. Had it finally acknowledged me?